Hello and welcome to another episode of the Game Theory Podcast. This is episode 42, and two things. One, the title is Pokemon, which is, let's be honest, most of it's just hoarding. And second of all, you may have noticed our new plug at the beginning. Yes, we are a part of a new family. David, why don't you tell us about it since you set it up?
Okay, so we are part of D20 Radio, where gamers roll. This is a network of podcasts that are all about gaming, RPGs, video games, anything really geek related, which is basically what we cover. So I thought we'd be a good fit, and so here we are. We have joined forces, and I'm
Force.
pretty excited for this because one of the podcasts I've been listening to for years is actually the flagship for this network, the Order 66 podcast.
That's a good podcast.
Yeah, I
Yes.
used to be really big into Star Wars Saga. I used to GM for it, and they were my biggest resource for that. And as listeners may know, we have recently rediscovered Star Wars role playing with Edge of the Empire, and turns out Order 66 is. So I would highly recommend anyone that's at all interested in playing this game, check it out. It's a very enjoyable show, very professional, a lot more so than us. So that's fun. They actually have sound editing and drops that make sense and a
And
license to use all their music. It's great.
It's basically everything you want to be as a podcast, whereas
Right.
us, we're the grassroots type. When I say grassroots, I mean illegal and underground.
Yeah, and
So,
just covered in grass and dirt because we're outside a lot. We're
yeah,
homeless.
we're homeless. We're the homeless podcast. Yes, welcome to the homeless podcast with your host Jeremiah and David.
We have a big audience of people who are homeless yet have iPhones.
You can say they're a captive audience, mostly because they're homeless as well, and they live under the same bridge. But no, we've got some cool listeners. But big week this week for video games. Why is that?
Probably because of E3.
What is
The
E3?
Well, let me tell you, friend. E3 is a gaming conference for. Well, it's actually a commercial thing. Like it's for the industry leaders. It used to be open to the public, but now they're like, no, you gotta have a press pass again.
Hmm.
But that being said, this is where they do their big reveals. Their big. This is what we're working on this year. This is what's coming out next year.
Yeah, they got smart about that. They actually E3 had a shaky history because I believe they took it down at one point and then they made it so that the public couldn't come anymore. But now they got smart about it and they said, wait a minute, we can sell virtual passes, which is what Blizzard does for
Mhm.
BlizzCon. Very smart because those things for BlizzCon it's like I think it's like $25 or something. I can't remember, but you get access to like all of their streams. You can click them and go check them out. So it's kind of like being there, but you can do it in your pajama or you do it in your underwear. Not to say that there aren't people at BlizzCon in their underwear, because there are. But yeah, you got to do it
Yeah,
legally.
they're called cosplayers.
Ah, okay, that's what that is.
Yeah.
I thought it was just some kind of pervert convention.
Well, that's same thing. Just
Yeah.
kidding. Actually, a little bit. I have a recent kind of fascination with cosplayers. Like, I'd love to interview one because it's just the detail. Okay, so when did you watch Lord of the Rings, the behind the scenes stuff on the DVDs?
Yeah.
Do you remember the interview with that one guy whose job for like 3 years straight was just to sit and make chainmail fence, like not fences, shirts, like vests?
Yeah, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Like that was so fascinating to me. I was like, that guy, his whole life was making armor and just making a very specific kind of armor. And that's kind of how I imagine like the kind of person who'd be good at cosplay, who can just really focus on the minute details, like that Peter Jackson level detail.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
pretty exciting. Oh, and by the way, happy Father's Day to you. Thank you for continuing our species as you do.
You're welcome. I do what I can to have as much promiscuous sex as I can. No,
Yes, with your
just with
monogamous life.
yeah, just with a monogamous wife. But yes, we did, and the fruits of our labor have entered this world.
Have
That's a
they
weird way to
present,
say it,
have,
children.
have the fruits of your loins presented you with a breakfast of sorts in bed?
Indeed, man, there was
Pass the
like
tie.
quiches involved, like all kinds of stuff. It was very elaborate. We've got
Is
this
he
bad
is
habit
he
of one.
cooking on a fifth grade level?
No, yeah, no, the kids didn't do anything but like hold the bacon and look cute. But yeah, it was good. It was good stuff. But anyway, we've got a big show. I guess we can move forward.
Yeah, yeah. Let's move on to recent news.
All right, recent news. This has been E3. the week after, I guess, the weekend following E3. So there's a lot to say. So we're gonna have to kind of cherry pick. But
Yeah, and if you are listening to gaming podcasts or watching gaming YouTube channels or IGN, you probably everyone's covering this. This is what everyone's talking about. So what I thought we could do is we'll just talk about the stuff that we thought looked cool to us, just individually.
okay, yeah, that's a great idea.
So for me, most exciting thing was the Zelda Wii U reveal.
Oh, yeah. What did you think about? Okay, I want to get your thoughts about just in general, and also like the art style and the gameplay.
Okay, so in general, like I like the way they opened it up. Okay, first of all, just backing off a minute, that whole Nintendo presentation, beautiful. Like they were, it
Yes.
seems like they're actually listening to the people's complaints. You know, like all you do is release Mario games. Like they kind of lampoon that with the robot chicken parts.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they're actually listening. And I love like there was just something really fun about watching Japanese guys talk about stuff that they made lovingly. You know, like that Yoshi Woolly World interview where they're just like, yeah, we like to make these things, and they show the little Yoshis they made out of yarn. Like it's just fun to listen to the people who are actually making the games like show them off.
Yeah, yeah, I always like that too. Because you can kind of like the passion that bleeds through is something that we pick up on. No, I'll save that for another podcast. There's like a whole thing that's going on there with the empathy. Yeah, but I'll get into that some other time.
All right,
It's fun though. It's fun.
our mirror neurons will have to wait.
Yes.
So yeah, so it starts off with the Zelda director, like the guy who's kind of directing the whole project, and he's talking about how in old Zelda games there's this feeling of wonder, right? Like remember how in the Zelda episode I talked about how Miyamoto actually, like his inspiration for the franchise was him as a little kid, like exploring caves around this hometown.
Yeah.
And so they're trying, but like when they went to 3D, they couldn't do that anymore because they didn't have the heart, like the memory to really make an open world where you could just explore. So it became more linear, right? Like you go to this temple, then
Mhm.
you go to this temple, then you go to this temple,
Yeah.
and they kind of stepped away from that with the most recent Zelda game, the Link Between Worlds.
Hmm.
But this one is definitely, it looks like they're trying to do like an open world, almost a Skyrim in Zelda kind of feel.
Man, that'll be awesome. Especially being bracketed by the Hyrule Warriors. You know, the other Zelda
Yeah.
thing they're putting off. That's nice because it allows you to explore Hyrule, which is kind of a weird, quirky little world.
Yeah, because it's constantly changing, right? Like it's like, ah, well, there's always a Death Mountain, there's always a, like a Lake Hylia, and there's always a Lost Forest. But where are they going to be this time?
You know, in my mind, it was always. You're right, it does change, but I've got this idea of how it, like a kind of a, I don't know, like a prototype or like an average of all those. You know, I don't
Like
know
a Platonic ideal of the Hyrule.
exactly. Yeah. So
So you asked about also the art style.
yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, you probably remember this. Remember when the GameCube came out and they were doing tech demos of it, and they
Uh,
had that that Link versus Ganon sword fight,
yes.
and everybody got so excited because it was a very kind of realistic, very like it was like the Ocarina of Time but way better looking.
Yes.
And then they finally came out with a Zelda game on the GameCube, and what did we get?
Wind Waker.
Right, and a lot of people were mad about that. I was mad about that. I was like, why are you going this direction? But in retrospect, because the same thing happened again here. We had the Wii U tech demo. Did you see the one with like Link fighting the giant spider?
Yes, that was cool.
It looks so awesome. And then we had the actual game come out, and it was more cel shaded.
Yeah.
It still looks really good, but it's not that. You and I are both kind of fans of that Twilight Princess aesthetic.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But then I looked back and I actually looked up that YouTube video of the old GameCube tech demo,
Uh-huh.
and that did not age well at all. That looks awful. It looks really bad. Like it's just old style like computer animation that just doesn't have much realism yet.
Mm.
At the time it blew our minds, but it did not age well. Whereas the Wind Waker, they've re-released it in HD on the Wii U, and it looks beautiful. Like it's still a weird art style for me, like the Big Eye Toon Link, but the game looks gorgeous. So I wonder if, in retrospect, the cel shading's the way to go.
I guess so. It does give it sort of a. I mean, okay, so when it comes out and it looks amazing, there's a punch to it.
Mhm.
Like I just played a game we'll talk about in a minute, and it's just jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring, and so you're missing that. But it's true, it does give it longevity. So it's sort of like it's sort of like you're playing for the long game, and it's never very exciting at the beginning. So kind of sucks for us, but for I guess if they're looking for replayability, I guess that's the way to go.
But that to be said, it does look beautiful. The new Zelda, the blades of grass blowing like individually in the wind, the clouds casting shadows as they drift by, the environmental effects, the even Link, like he's looking quite beautiful. The internet's a little confused about his gender in this reveal. A lot of people think he might be a girl in this upcoming episode.
Well, that'd be an interesting take,
You
Instead
know,
of be Prince Zelda, I guess.
well, we always get him confused anyway, right? Everyone calls him Zelda, so
Yeah, might as well, just run with it.
let's just go with it. Let's have a
Yeah,
let's have a let's have a Legend of Zelda where Zelda's the hero. Why not?
let's do it, man. She's actually in Hyrule Warriors. You can play as her, and she's pretty BA. She makes this like sort of light, like magic thing, and like she's more of a fencing type. It's pretty good, pretty sweet.
Yeah, that looks a lot of fun, and it's also got kind of a Miyazaki kind of feel. Like it looks like another. I was watching an analysis of it, and it's a lot of the same visual elements are from like this very famous Japanese cartoon movie. So I wonder if there's any influence there. But yeah, I'm excited for that. What's something that you saw that excited you?
A few things. One, Evolve, which is kind of a bro-ish game, but I can get on board with some bro games. Like, okay, so basically you got a team of ultimate badasses, right?
Okay.
Which that's a reference to Aliens, guys. If you don't know, the second Alien movie in the franchise.
Me and my squad of ultimate badasses will protect you.
Protect you. Yeah, it's awesome. So anyway, yeah, you got a squad of ultimate badasses, kind of futuristic type things, and you run through and you hunt one monster. Well, here's the fun of it: you have one person playing, or you have group of people playing the good guys, and then you got someone playing the monster. And I love those kinds of games, like Left 4 Dead 2 hooked me, Natural Selection and Natural Selection 2, like definitely hooked me. Those games are fun. It's fun playing like the terror or the beast, And
Yeah, and I like that asynchronous multiplayer, where it's
Mhm.
4 versus 1. Those
Yeah.
are always interesting.
Although I do like a team better, like me, being such a huge fan of co-ops, I'd rather this be like a group of monsters, maybe like some support monsters and stuff. As long as it's not an exact reflection of the other team, where it's just reskinned.
Yeah,
That
like
bugs me.
Warcraft 2 Orcs versus Humans. It's like Elven
Right.
Archer versus Troll Axe Thrower. They're the same.
Yeah, that's just complete. You want to be able to switch to the other guys and just feel different. Like I feel like Left 4 Dead 2 did really well with that.
Yeah.
All the humans are generic, and then the bad guys are like very different, and you've got very different roles to play. I love that. So I would love to see it, but the thing is, it's a beautiful game. You get to play monster hunting. It's always fun, and this big badass monster. Probably gonna be epic battles, and there's different classes. That's the kind of things I look for in a shooter. But that's awesome. I was excited about that.
Well, what
Did
I
you get
look
a chance to
for...
see the trailer at all?
No, I'd never heard of it until you just brought it up.
Okay.
I'll have to check it out. But what I look for in a shooter is girls who turn into squids.
What? Okay.
Yeah, so they revealed Splatoon on the Nintendo Wii U's coming out, and
Right.
everyone's kind of hailing this as like the most fun multiplayer game at E3. Like it looks like a lot of fun despite its weird premise. You're a bunch of squids who can turn to humans and shoot paint at each other, and you try and cover the arena with the most amount of your ink.
Amazing. That sounds really fun, David.
I don't think it does sound fun when I say it that
No.
way. But the trailer made it look like a lot of fun actually.
I actually didn't see the trailer of it, but I heard about it. Everyone's talking about it. Even in Twitch chat, like Twitch TV is a streaming platform, and they just cover events like this. Anyway, they had a thing, and people kept talking about it. They're like, more Splatoon! Go back to Splatoon! When they were on Destiny, and I was like, really? What is Splatoon?
Yeah, I don't know if I can actually play it because I'm a cephalophobe, but
Yeah. Cephalophobe. What is a cephalophobe for those who are not psychological savvy?
oh, it's a word I just made up, meaning that I'm terrified of squids. I just
Yeah.
not enjoy them at all.
Yes. I do not have that aversion, so I'll be just fine playing it.
I did eat them a
Well.
lot in Korea, but that was just to assert my dominance.
Every bite was a vindication.
It was healthy for me. It helped me work through some issues.
Cussing at them with every bite, bitch.
So what else caught your fancy?
I'm gonna squish 2 and 1. okay, so the new Middle Earth game, Shadow of Mordor, and Witcher 3, and I put them together because they're similar feels.
Hmm.
It's like a supernatural guy who's running through one man on a mission, and you've got some combat is highlighted here. Which the old Witcher games were fun, but I like the world better than I like the combat system because it's weird. The combat system, you either love it or you hate it. Some people love it, because it's very tricksy. You've got like potions and traps and projectiles and you got to mix all those. And I just hated that. It's a lot of that pause before combat and put all the things on just right, and then during combat switch around some things, and it's a lot of pausing.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's
it's a lot like Monster Hunter.
okay, okay, yeah. Also, like the old Baldur's Gate, that stuff's going away now. Like, look at
Yeah.
Dragon Age as a franchise. It started like that, and now it's very much not like that. Dragon Age is coming out with a new game too. But anyway, yeah. So these two are somewhat similar, except that looks Witcher. I'm hoping is moving away from that as well, and Shadows of Mordor definitely looked like it wasn't that too. But there was a weird complexity to Shadows of Mordor. Um,
Yeah, Shadows of Mordor looked like it was basically Assassin's Creed in Middle Earth as far as the gameplay.
Yeah, but they had this weird part that I didn't understand. I was watching someone play it, and like during battle, it would pull out and show all the enemy forces, and you would like click on them, and I don't know, and they were all lined up like in bleachers basically, and you clicked on them, and it would like say, oh, this person vanquished this person, or this person got bigger, or stronger. I have no idea what was going on there, but if any of our listeners know what was going on, like let me know, I guess, in the Facebook group, because I just it looked cool, and I was like, oh, complexity, that would make this game better. So. But
So,
yeah, what
yeah.
else?
Well, a big reveal was seeing Shigeru Miyamoto playing Star Fox on the Wii U using their special controllers, like the console, the cockpit. It looks pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah, it's been too long since we've had a new Star Fox game, so that made me pretty excited.
Yeah, that'd be great. How'd it look?
It looked beautiful and innovative. It looks really fun to play. Like this is the first time, like the Wii U has just had a rocky start. Like for the most of its history, I've been like, why should I buy one? There's no games that I'm excited about.
Mm.
But I think after this, a lot of people are gonna be like, you know what? Yeah, as a secondary console, like that's, they probably already own a PS4 or a Xbox One. But I think this would justify a Wii U. All these games are getting announced. Like I'm actually excited to play these games.
Yeah, okay. That's something I think that was a prediction you made. Like in one of our earlier episodes, you said, the Wii U is going to do. I think it's going to be really crappy for a while until the developers figure out how to use the two-person or the two-screen system,
Mhm.
and then it's going to pull out some stuff that's going to blow our minds.
Right, that's the
So
same thing that happened with the 3DS, right? It had a terrible first year, and then it started blowing people's minds.
I know, and I don't get what people's hang-up is here. I'm not a video game designer, so I don't know. But what came immediately to mind, I was like, oh, you could do a shooter on this system where you look down and that's like your, not just your GPS because that's lame and obvious, but you
Mhm.
look down and let's say you could click it and it's your weapon, and like you could click different parts of your weapon and they would bring out different modifications, because like, when you're in combat, for example, and like, sometimes you have to look down at your weapon and something, could be jammed, or you could have, well, a few different things, or you just have to reload it. So like if you had to reach down there and touch the different parts, or like pull them and do different things, that could be fun.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. I was thinking anything you have to look at secondarily, like first you're scanning, your environment for targets when you're, in combat, but then when you're looking down, there you need to do things like, call in a medevac, or give someone first aid, a lot of different things. But I just thought that would be cool, like two different screens.
Yeah, yeah, it's got potential. I think people are starting to realize it more, and by realize I mean not coming to the idea of it, but to actually create it, to make it
To
real.
make it real. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I say that word a lot, and then even on my thesis, my freaking advisor was like, "No, it's not real. That makes it sound wishy-washy." I was like, "No, to realize, it's two different
Like
meanings."
to create reality out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to realize. Anyway, well, that's cool. And lastly, I saw these will just be quick because I'm not that excited about them. Is Metal Gear Solid and a new one, but I know we have some really big fans in our listener base, so I just want to bring that up. We did see it, the big bloody dude walking through, his face is all messed up. I saw the trailer, but and I'll probably might play it. It depends. I still need to play the last one they released. But and second, the last one that I think was noteworthy was that they have a new Tomb Raider. Oh, and
Yes.
Mass Effect. Sorry, Mass
Yeah.
Effect and Tomb Raider.
Mass Effect and Tomb Raider. Yeah, they've got, and they showed the new Dragon Age a little bit as well.
Hmm.
But as far as like non-Nintendo announcements, the Tomb Raider and Mass Effect were what got me really excited.
Yeah.
And and Assassin's Creed Unity. That looks so good.
Okay.
Mostly because it takes place in Paris, and the way they were talking
Yeah.
about it was they were saying it was the largest city they'd ever done a Mass Effect or an Assassin's Creed game. So it's like Notre Dame is a one-for-one like scale representation of it, which is
Wow.
awesome. And then like if you take all the islands from Black Flag and put them together, it's not going to be as big as this Paris is going to be.
Wow.
So again, very exciting for that. Mostly just because it's like a city I've been to so many times, but I've never gotten to run across the rooftops of it. So it's like a new way to go about
Well, why
exploring
didn't you?
Paris.
Why didn't you just do that?
Well, there were Templar agents all about. I didn't want to give away
Oh,
my
okay.
position.
Then they know who you were. Okay. Oh,
Right.
all right. Fair enough. You can do it here.
Exactly.
Well, that's cool. And what got you excited about the Tomb Raider?
Well, we both had such good things to say about the last Tomb Raider, and this just the short trailer we saw, I was just like, yes, more of that. Looks like they're doing more of the same, more archery, more bow and arrow, more climbing things, that little hand axe thing she had, the little pick.
That's good. I'm glad they did more of the same. Some people like criticize that, but I think keep stay on target,
Yeah.
and then just fire a couple flares. You know what I mean? Like stay on target,
Right.
keep that market well within your sights, and then do something flashy with it.
Right, and she fights a bear at the beginning, so I mean,
Yeah,
what's not to like? It's a bear,
yeah,
and
but David, was that bear raping her? Because that is just unacceptable.
oh yeah, I hope we have more of that debate. But I'm also so glad. Like I was never a fan of the old Lara Croft, so like when everyone's like, "Oh, give her the dual pistols again." No, just keep with the bow and arrow. That's working for her. I'm not married to the dual pistols.
Yeah, those were cheesy. I liked how they did what they did with it in the first one, where it was the whole quest. You have that one
Yeah.
from your dad, and then you get the second one from the guy who's like trying to help you get out of the island, and he
Mhm.
gives a lot for the quest. No spoilers. And yeah, and then you're like, oh, I got the iconic ones, but the amount of time you spend with them is tiny, which is good. I
Right.
like the bow and arrow feel.
It really felt good.
What? You're an archaeologist and you're in a primitive society. Like pulling guns out doesn't make you a hero. That makes you a jerk.
I know, right? So yeah, there's that, and then the Mass Effect. We didn't really get to see much of it. It's not really very far along yet, but I'm just from what I did see, it's a fun world to revisit.
Yeah, yeah.
Same
True
with
that.
Dragon Age. Same with Dragon.
Although I'm really curious about how they're gonna do this because yeah, I felt there was a kind of a stretch after the end of the what was it second one when or it was the first one where he clearly was it which one was where he clearly dies just right at the end or whatever
On
or,
Mass Effect?
yeah.
Oh, that was
Maybe it
the
was right.
the controversial ending of the third one.
Oh no, I meant no at the beginning of the second one in the
Oh
Cerberus.
yeah, where they
It was just like
put them back together.
yeah, explodes them, and I was like, that should be the ending of the last one. Like, what's going on? But more importantly, like that's just weird for the plot. Like, why do that? That's strange. I don't. It was unnecessary.
Yeah,
I don't know. Because you can have a lot of different reasons for him to be joining a different side, or just not write that in at all. You're God here. You're gonna make whatever you want.
it's
But
true.
anyway,
It's true.
yeah.
So what would you say you're most excited about that they showed at E3?
Halo 5.
Yes, you mean Halo 1 through 4 compilation and then 5?
Yes, that's what I meant. No, by far no. We're not fans of Halo over here. I don't know. Maybe Evolve. I hate to say it because I think it's not an Xbox only thing, is it? It might be. No. I think it was on the PlayStation like venue. But at any rate, yeah, it should be good.
For me, it's got to be Smash Brothers U. I'm so ready for that game. That is the game I'm most excited for. And the idea of being able to play as myself, punching Kirby right in the face, yes. Put my me in there. Let him fight.
That's gonna be awesome.
How'd
Yeah,
you like? Go
I
ahead.
think that one I'm gonna play much more. But I do love myself some multiplayer fighting or shooters, and this is definitely looks like a fun one.
How'd you like that little bonus Smash Brothers anime at the end? They snuck in there.
Trying to remember which one it was. Oh no,
Link.
I didn't see it.
Oh, you didn't see it? Link and Pit fighting?
No.
Oh, okay, I'll have to link that to you later. It's they just like they threw in at the very end like a surprise announcement of another fighter, and they did the whole thing as like an anime, so it was kind of an
Oh,
interesting trailer.
okay. Huh. Well, I guess that's. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about this? I didn't want to get stuck too much into the E3 stuff. We could be here for the whole podcast.
Um, Yoshi's Woolly World looks adorable. That's all I have to say about that. It's
Of
the
course,
cutest Yoshi ever, and that's hard to do.
that is hard to do.
But yeah, I've just been catching highlights. I'm excited for the stuff that's going to come out on PC, which is probably most of what we saw. And for the stuff that isn't, then I finally feel justified in that impulse buy on my Wii U.
Yeah, I'm hoping that thing does just keeps getting better and better. But anyway, well, all right. I guess we can move on into gaming experiences.
Gaming experiences.
Is it still staticky?
Not now. It just seems to be like when you talk loud, it starts to go.
Oh crap. Okay.
I'm trying to be excited anymore.
Oh damn it. That didn't come through on the actual podcast though, did it?
I don't know.
I don't think.
I haven't listened to it yet.
Okay. All right. Gaming experiences. This is the part of the show where we talk about what we've been playing. So, David, what have you been playing?
Well, first of all, Steam is doing a sale right now. Remember that Indie Games movie bundle or Indie Games the movie?
Yeah, yeah.
They just did a sale where all those games were like 75% off that were in that movie. So I bought Super Meat Boy and Fez and played them a little while. Actually, didn't really play Fez all that long. I kind of lost my interest around the second little node.
Mm-hmm. Me
Did
too.
you beat that game? Okay, it's the
No.
same thing.
Yeah, it's okay, but I think the criticisms were correct about that guy. You know, people were like, "Hey, you pretend like this is the most amazing thing ever," and it's just kind of a cute little game.
Yeah, it's just kind of a cute little gimmick. So yeah, I played that a little bit. Played Super Meat Boy until I just got too frustrated. I beat the first world and got the second. I was like, no more of that. That is a tough platformer.
I like that game, man.
Yeah,
I like I like Twitch games, you know.
sure. Yeah, I'll have to get back into it, but it's a game I can't play for like I can't beat like two worlds in a row. I beat the forest world and I was like, all right, it's time for a break.
Yeah, that one does seem to work best with periodical breaks in it to avoid frustration.
And I also got Thief on sale. It's a game that you were talking about a few episodes ago.
Oh, how much was it off?
Like 60 or 80%. It was pretty cheap. It was like $15.
Oh, wow, that's about perfect price point. What do you think?
Yeah, for $15, I'm enjoying it. It's I like that here's what I like about it. I like that you can play through the level with different styles and get different rewards. So
Yeah.
like I usually feel compelled to do the ghost style, where no one never knows you were there, but that's the most like tedious one. Takes the
Right.
longest. You have to keep doing reloads if you get caught. So sometimes it's fun just to play Predator and get that reward instead. Like you're still gonna get the same reward in gameplay, and then it doesn't take you as long. I haven't actually tried that yet, but I think that would be a nice change of pace.
Yeah, isn't that cool how your objectives change as per what, I
Like what
guess
you enjoy
what you
playing.
do?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
so
what your style is.
if it senses you're going Predator, then it changes the objectives versus like Ghost, or it's usually some mix in between, but it'll weight towards whatever percentage you're doing. So that's fun. I like
Yeah,
that.
I usually get a ghost with like a third of it as opportunist.
Yeah, Opportunist is just so fun. You know, like stealing stuff off of people. You know, the
Mhm.
guards. that,
Yeah.
that counts as
I
Opportunist.
know, and I
But
feel so guilty because they get such pittances. Like you rob them. It's like you found four gold pieces, their entire paycheck. I'm like, 4 gold pieces doesn't help you at all. Like my next upgrade's at like 400.
yeah, every little bit counts. You know, no matter how many people you have to crush on the way.
Mm-hmm.
Hopes and dreams, folks. That's what I just stole from them.
Crushed and dreams. So you've been doing a lot of gaming, like 31 hours of gaming recently on a game.
I went nuts. Like, okay, so us gamers, we understand this little thing that happens sometimes where you get a burst of free time and all of a sudden, and you get a game that captivates you, and those two things interact, and
Perfect storm.
you just say goodbye life. That definitely happened to me. Castlevania, I've always loved that series. I like it. I like the themes. I like the heroes. I like the storyline. It's fun. So the release of Lords of Shadow, I played the first one when it first came out, and I fell in love. I loved what they did, rebooting the franchise. Well, Lords of Shadow 2, I couldn't afford when it came out, which just came out not too long ago. And Mirror of Fate, I didn't have a 3DS. So that sucked. So what I did was I got them on sale on Amazon, like bundled them all together for like dirt cheap. And I was like, what? So I got them along with the DLCs, and it's amazing. Oh, that game's so fun.
Yeah.
So Lords of Shadow 2 got weird there for a while because it comes in the modern setting, and they kind of effed it up in the beginning. Like, they should have made this part smoother. But when it transitions into the second part, which you'll know when you get there because things start getting sweet again, because it gets really crappy for a minute, and you're like, this is stupid. I'm being bullied around. Like, I'm Dracula. F these people for trying to, like, use me. And they clearly are. And you're just like, oh, I guess I'll let them. I'm Dracula. I don't have any ambitions. I just suck blood and get used all day.
That
But
doesn't. I don't feel very cool at all, especially not drag cool.
I see what you did.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So, but it gets better. Stick to it. Stick with it.
Yeah, they switch it around because the guy that your worst enemy you're working for, and he's like manipulating you, and you're just letting it happen. And I'm like, you could just jump at him right now, turn into some mist, and just explode him. You do that to everyone. Like, I don't know, you're killing like these massive demons like that are like the size of a building, and you're killing them, and then you go to him, and you're like, well, I don't want to rock his boat. I'm kind of scared of him. I'm like, you're gonna kill this guy by the end, probably. He's probably gonna be an end boss. But then everything makes sense after a minute. You're like, oh, okay, Dracula's still Dracula, awesome. But but it's just the way they transition there and the cover story. There's some holes in it where you're kind of like, yeah, but still he could have blank blank. And anyway, it's hard to talk about without spoilers. But it has a satisfying end to the franchise, which is something all the reviewers were saying, and I was really hoping for as I was playing through when it was getting crappy. I was like, I don't know how they're gonna pull this out of the gutter.
You should do
But
like a PSA message, like a "It Gets Better" campaign for like Dracula's. Like,
yeah.
you're getting bullied right now, but trust me, man, it gets better. You're gonna feel like a badass again soon.
Yeah, so cool. And I got the DLC called Revelations, and it has where you get to play as Alucard.
Oh,
Best time I've ever had in that whole series from the beginning. Simon Belmont, everything like from Nintendo days. It's super cool. He feels cool. His abilities are cool. He's awesome. Like, oh man,
that's good because the DLC on the first Lords of Shadow sucked.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I should caveat this with I had a great time because the combat was fun and I love the character Alucard, and he's voiced by Rob Stark from Game of Thrones, which is awesome. I mean, the guy's voice is cool. He's like, of course, you got about somebody small.
Yeah.
Why did I even try that? I couldn't do the accent, and I didn't remember what he said, so I just failed in both of those.
Is that the same voice actor they used for the Mirror of Fate?
I don't remember. I I think I don't remember.
Because
Holy
they were
crap.
consistent with the Patrick Stewart and Gabriel
Yeah,
Belmont.
I think it was. But anyway, so in this one, just Alucard feels cool. He's like this, tragic hero kind of guy, and he's trying to do the best of what he can with his curse, and he's trying to fight, the blood curse and stuff. So it's just really cool, and he's fun. But I should caveat that with the story's a little weird, like on that. It's all very cool until you really like kind of squint in your eyes and think about it. Then it's like, wait a minute, why blank blank blank, right? So you guys will figure it out. I don't want to spoil it, but definitely get that DLC if it's cheap. It's super fun, and you get to figure out what was going on with like Dracula's in the sleep for a long time. That's not a spoiler. That's just that happened, and that's why he's in a modern setting. But it's like, hey, what was Alucard doing this whole time? That doesn't make any sense. He was alive. He's a vampire. So what was happening there? So it's really fun. It's really cool, and it fleshes out the relationship, the odd relationship of Alucard and his dad, Dracula.
And in other gaming experiences, we pulled off a hat trick, a very rare occasion. We got 3 weeks in a row of playing an online role-playing game together.
We did, yeah.
That almost never happens. I don't know what it is about our group, but they're really hard to organize into meeting online.
They are, man. They are. But and you got glowing reviews so far. Both Tim and John have said on the sidebar, they're like, man, I want to play again. It's like crack. So,
Oh yeah, that was my first completely home. I've been using the stuff that came in the book to learn the system, but that was my first actual adventure I wrote off the top of my head. So I'm glad it was a success.
yeah, it was super fun. Yeah, very good. It was good. Still same positive things we said the last couple times. It's the system's getting more, and it's starting to fit more and more like a well-worn glove, so we can predict it, we can mess with it. Having read part of the books now, like I could do things like, oh hey, I can assist you here, or I can do this with my.
I've got this maneuver here that does this.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah, and also I think it's starting to click for some of the players. Like I explained it to John because he's still kind of thinking of this as a fourth edition kind of tactical role playing game, right? Like
Right.
it's okay, I'm gonna spend my advantage to give you a boost die, and then I'm gonna spend this to recover one strain, and like he's just not really thinking. He's like, he's just like I'm gonna throw a grenade at them because they're all clumped together, and tactically that's where a grenade comes in handy, and so he just throws grenades all the time.
Yeah.
And but I think like I explained to him, I was like, no, don't think about what the best move is. Think about we're making a Star Wars movie. What would be a cool thing to happen in this scene? And I think
Yeah.
I think looking at it that way, it's starting to change how we play it.
Definitely, and it's more fun that way. Of course it is. I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, how would this make this look cooler? Hey, that was cool. Of course it
Yeah.
was. You just cut out the middleman of like, how do I be most effective? Hey, that was cool too.
Right. We had to redefine our win condition. Like the way we've approached RPGs in the past, like with fourth edition D&D, is like, we're gonna have some good synergy with your tank and my healer. We're gonna flank that guy and do this really cool thing that I'm gonna give you a bonus. You're gonna do this, and that's how we win in our minds is by being more efficient numerically. And
Yeah.
so, changing our minds over to thinking, how are we going to win? Like instead of how are we going to win, we can say, how is this going to be cool, like a cool story? And when we start thinking of it like that way, it also makes the GM less adversarial, right? Like you instead of
Yeah.
like thinking I'm trying to destroy you, you're like, oh man, we are up against some pretty crazy odds, but this is a cool scene. Instead of he's trying to kill me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's exciting because, like you mentioned last time, we talked about the narrative style, and it feels like, um, well, I mean, just yes, and everyone's playing off of each other rather than obsessing about what moves they're going to use next time. So
Yeah, so exciting
very good,
to continue that.
very good. Oh, and I forgot to mention about the Castlevania games, Lords of Shadow. Jesus, they're beautiful. Like
Oh
going
yeah,
into
it's like
to
painting in
every
the background almost.
yeah, yeah, and every room is different, like satisfyingly different. And there's well, there are also some bumps. I should mention that in Lords of Shadow 2, the actual game. First of all, it starts off epic, and it should have kept going like that, like the storyline, the whole point of why you're fighting. But then it gets weird. But and there's some questionable parts where it's not very fun. But in fact, there's a few of those, like the stealth system like, that was thrown in, and it just feels wonky and stupid. I'm like, why can't I just kill that guy? I killed a massive demon dragon thing, and I can't kill this guard? Why? This should be like an optional thing, but it's not. It's like you can't even swing your weapon.
Yeah, that's what the reviews I saw said, but they said that luckily the stealth parts were kind of few and far between.
They are, but it also did that thing that you mentioned was in one of the DLCs where it's annoying, like annoying little like mini quests or not side quests, but like part of the main storyline, but a different mechanic, like hiding.
Yeah,
Um,
the hide or die mechanic.
yes, it did that here with a guy that you eventually fight anyway, and I tore him up. He didn't even hit me, but like 3 times. But the combat is super fun, by the way. So you want to get to that. So like this, it's Pan, the mythical creature. You kill him in one of the old ones, the first one,
Mm.
as Gabriel, and well, in this, like it's like someone that knew him. Well, it's his brother. His brother gets really pissed, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you," and you're like, "Oh no!" and you hide. And I'm like, "What? Dracula? Why? I mean, because he like saunters in there, knowing what he's going into, because it's like, oh hey, Pan's brother's really pissed, man. And he's like, yeah, I know. And he walks in, he's like, what's up? And he's like, I'm super mad. And then he's like, uh-oh, and he jumps behind the thing. It's so stupid. And then like and it's like, don't crunch leaves, he'll hear you. And I'm like, oh, really? Come on. Like, so you got to go through like a little maze, and he's hunting you. And when he gets to you, he just runs up and stabs you, and then you turn into bats and restart the maze. And then I'm like, ugh. So you can't even just run through it and blunder and just let yourself get hit a few times. No, it resets. So I had to do that, and that was really annoying. And then what's stupid is, like, once you get through the maze, you just walk up to the top, and you're like, all right, now let's fight. It's so stupid. So
This is
it was,
clearly tacked on arbitrarily for no reason other than that they want like the sequences nobody liked from the first game. So we decided we need to bring them back in an artificial and unnatural way.
yeah. Can I just encourage a little pragmatism here? Like, it is for DMs or GMs or for game designers. Just don't think like, oh, hey, this mechanic I want to put this mechanic in there, and how can I make that as fun as possible? Instead, think what would be most fun here, and then put that in. Like, if you want a stealth mechanic in the game for like sales reasons or something, that's a fine goal. But you have to make the story make that make sense, right? Like, you have to craft your story to make that mechanic make sense. You don't just wedge it in there, and say
Oh
like,
yeah,
oh, this.
it's good advice. Like sometimes you get married to an idea, like oh, it's Castlevania, and we in the last game we had this stealth thing, so we should have that again. But
Mm-hmm.
don't be married to your ideas. Like just ask yourself, are they fun? And then if they are, bring them back. If not, leave them behind.
Yeah, yeah. I do this in scientific writing too. Like whenever I write, like you probably done this. You write a big chunk that like took forever to research, and then it
Mhm.
doesn't make sense in your overall flow, but you like try to make it wedge into
Yeah,
some
you
section.
put a lot of work into that, and you're not gonna let it go.
Exactly.
That sunk
Exactly.
cost fallacy sinking your ship.
That's right. Yeah. And then your supervisor or your maybe well supervisor works for everything. As your supervisor looks at that and goes, "That's stupid. That shouldn't be in there." And you get like butthurt about it. You try to keep it in still. You're like, "Well, maybe if I trim it down." They're like, "No, that just doesn't make sense." So with this, that should have happened. I mean, they should have just been like, listen, stealth mechanic was a cool idea, but no, it's dumb. And like these stupid mini games, there was a few of those, and they're really annoying.
I did
But
like. Do they keep the option to skip puzzles? Because
no.
I did the puzzles in Lords of Shadow 1, but once I got to max level, I was just like, no time for these puzzles in the DLC. I was like, skip, give me the answer. Okay, got it, thanks.
Oh no, they didn't do that.
Oh,
Fortunately, they're good at pacing, right? Like these games are epic for a reason. They're paced perfectly. Where you're fighting stuff, you're not fighting stuff, you're doing a little puzzle, you're figuring something out, then you're fighting stuff. Like it feels beautiful. They master that. They master art. They master presentation. Didn't do so good on story and really bombed on mechanics. So the fight mechanic is amazing, but the mechanics as far as like putting the game together and which bits would be more fun, they completely bombed on.
I don't want to spend too much time on this because
Yeah.
Castlevania, but I'm curious. Would you like? How would you say this compares to like a God of War franchise? And then if they did it better, what do you think worked better here?
Ah, man, I put it about the same because God, there's parts that are way better and way worse, but I like the things. Both of them have an awesome like mythos to draw from. I
Hmm.
like that. Like Dracula's, that's a cool mythos. Um, and yeah, and God of War, like the Greco-Roman type stuff was really awesome. Greek gods, very
Hmm.
cool. God of War was more pure in its intention. Like it knew exactly what it wanted and went straight for it. But that also made it kind of boring. And like Lords of Shadow, they're a little confused about what they wanted to do. They pulled in some weird story elements that were dumb, but the storytelling's about the same because of that. Because they shot epic and they fell short, and God of War just shot straight for the middle and they hit it. They weren't trying to like blow you away with the story, and it didn't. So I don't know. I think they're about the same, but I like Lords of Shadow more because I like that. God
Mythos
of
more.
War kind of yeah, it played itself out. Lords of Shadow was an actual tale that you could tell was crafted from the beginning to make sense,
Okay.
whereas
God
God
of
of War
War
just
was
tacked
more
on.
like, oh, this was a surprise hit. Let's make a sequel and another sequel, and then they just kind
Yeah,
of try to do that bigger and bigger, bigger and better until they ran out of. Like you're fighting the planet Earth at one point. You're fighting Gaia.
yeah, yeah. And then
All
you've
right.
killed all the gods, and they still made another one. I was like, how does that even happen? And why did you kill those other gods? They had nothing to do with your vengeance. It was
Sometimes
absurd.
you just gotta get really thorough with your vengeance and kill everyone that the guy's ever met.
I know, and everyone along the way. Like, there's just people standing around sometimes, and you're like, hey, get the chains! It's just so
Yeah, I
strange.
feel like definitely Gabriel is a more sympathetic, even as Dracula is a more sympathetic character than Kratos, who just seems like a really petulant dick.
Yeah, yeah. The first one, you're all with him, but after that, the rest of them, I'm just like, why am I still angry here? And what about this guy? He's my friend. Why am I fighting him now? He's stopping me from being stupid. He's like, hey man, you might not want to do that because they're gods, and there's no reason to do it. And he's like, really? I'm Kratos, bitch! And he headbutts him, and then they fight. So
Let's sing a song of the rage of Achilles.
yeah, yeah. All
Cool.
right. Yeah. So that wraps up my gaming experiences. Is that yours?
Yeah, basically some indie games. Been clocking in on my Mario Kart and uh, tried out Thief, and then of course Edge of the Empire. So let's get into our in-depth analysis.
In-depth analysis. For those of you just joining us, this is our segment where we do all the analysis. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of the podcast, and we put it as a different section so that, so that if some people wanted a shorter podcast but didn't want any of the content gone, and then some other people said keep it like it is. We broke it up
I
into
love
two.
that request. I want a shorter podcast, but don't take out any content.
That's what they said. Because I was like, well, which parts do you want out? And they're like, I don't know, but keep all the good stuff. And I was like, all right. So I imagine that means the in-depth analysis.
Yeah, so this is for people who just want to get right down into it. They're so serious about Pokemon, they cannot wait to get into it. And here we are.
Their thumbs can't click that fast enough on their podcast interface on their iPhone. But we're doing Pokemon, or and the title says Hoarding. Let's be honest, because that's kind of what you're doing. Just give me those animals and enslave them and hoard them, collect them all. That's part of their slogan.
Michael Vick, gotta fight them all. They're animals. So Pokemon, in case you are from like a different planet and you're just pretending to be human and you're like, what are humans into? Humans love things that are pop culture, and you just weren't here for this. Pokemon are what humans play. It started out in February 1996, came to America in 97, and ended up being the second best-selling video game franchise of all time after Mario.
Wow.
So pretty they came pretty close to unseating Mario, which is a pretty big achievement in video games. But they are the second best franchise of all time as far as sales. It's basically what allows Nintendo to fail so hard on things like the Wii U and be like, that's okay, we're still printing money with Pokemon. We can afford to go bankrupt on other things. So also indirectly kind of caused, between that, Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball, the Pokemon anime kind of indirectly caused the proliferation of Western broadcast of anime. Like before that, we didn't really get a lot. We'd get like your occasional Speed Racer, and then
Right.
Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball, and then Pokemon just became it was like bigger than Star Wars for a while. It was just this big, like, everybody. They had cereal, cartoon, trading card game, video games, and it was just everywhere. Everywhere you looked. My bed sheets, Pokemon.
Yeah, in college, people.
In college, even.
The best part. Oh man, that got a lot of happy head nods, and I don't think people really know that we were totally serious.
Yeah, because college is where you can kind of like write everything off as you're being ironic, right? You're like, oh, I'm really cool. It's like that's where hipsters got invented. Was people went to college for the first time, realized they could be ironic, and then secretly like things and not get made fun of for it.
Yeah.
But no, we seriously did like Pokemon.
Yeah. And a lot of people come in, they're like, oh, whose bed is that? And I'm like, that's my roommate, he's in class. And they're like, it's the best! And I'm like, yeah, the best around. That's the idea.
Seriously, like you see some girl with like a Bulbasaur on her shirt. That's not a metaphor, like a Bulbasaur on her shirt. And you're just like, oh, that's awesome, rock on. You just want to high five her because we're all kind of like admitting to ourselves that, in high school where you have to kind of be cool and like pretend that you're not interested in things.
Yeah.
And then you find out that everybody secretly likes cool, like nerdy things like Pokemon or Star Wars or whatever it is we were keeping in the closet.
Yeah, pretend we're not interested in things like D&D. We used to have the most, like, if you think that like teenage boys can't clean up quickly, you are wrong. Like, we'd have people come over, surprise guests, and we're like, oh god, because we were like starting to ride the waves of popularity up. The guys team is what we used to call ourselves. And as that happened, we got more and more people, kind of like, oh, you guys are awesome. Yeah, we like you guys. And
so people started dropping by on our hidden sanctuary of polyhedral dice and nerdiness.
Yeah, so we're playing, like, rolling the d20s, and we're all, like, going, oh, man, then I slice his head off, and we're all excited and jumping around, and then someone's like, ding dong, hey, it's a guy's team here! We're like, oh, and we just, like, instant, like, special forces type stuff, where we'd be like, you two, go, run up, interference, get all the dice everywhere, you, collect the books! And then we, like, there's even, like, a special little place to throw it, like, that little, what was that, David?
Little like storage area underneath the staircase, like a little cabinet
under the stairs, just like we hit all the bodies. It was great. But anyway,
yeah. So Pokemon.
So
basically, for anyone that hasn't played it or just doesn't know the basic concept, it's like rock paper scissors times 18. There's like 18 different types of Pokemon. Because they add fairy with the newest. This is gonna sound like jibber jabber for a lot of people, but there's there's rock types, there's water types, there's fire types. They each have strengths and weaknesses depending on who they're fighting. So it's like rock paper scissors. Like you do double damage against stuff that's weak against you. You take half damage from stuff you're strong against, but multiply that by 18. So you have this complicated chart that like Pokemasters are going to memorize and be like, oh, he's playing a Steel type. I should play, I don't know, like an Ice type or a Fire type, or I don't really remember. But you have to play the right Pokemon to win, but you only get 6 with you at any time, so you have to kind of cover a lot of bases. But don't worry, some of the Pokemon are dual types, so you can hit 2 birds with 1 stone that way. And if this sounds complicated, don't worry. There's only 719 Pokemon to learn all their types.
Oh, that comforts me. Thank you.
Yes, first there were only 150, and I felt pretty confident, but having returned to the franchise recently, I'm a little overwhelmed.
God, I can imagine. I can only imagine. I didn't even enter the franchise when it was like popular, because at the time I was the youngest of my house, and so I just missed the craze. That like I was in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Pog craze, man. That was like my thing. And then right after that came like Power Rangers and Dragon Ball Z.
This
and
is
Pokemon.
more like the generation that's like 8 years below us.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But you
my
have a little
kid's sister was way into it, right? And she and her cousin would they'd link up their Game Boys with a little cable, they could do the little battles and they could trade.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's a little beyond us.
We developed an affinity, and we adopted Pikachu as our spirit animal for the guys team.
Yeah, he was like our totem.
That was like the invention of the irony, but we actually like him thing, because people were like, "Oh, that's hilarious! You guys are funny," and we're like, "Oh, yes, we are," but actually, he's kind of cool.
Yeah, we had this little like pissed off Pikachu on our shirts. He's just marching really like a badass.
We wore T-shirts with Pikachu on it in high school, and well, I guess probably some people made fun of us, but most people liked it. So
those people are flipping burgers now, so everyone else liked it.
They thought it was funny. They're like, "Oh, you guys make great jokes." And we're like, "Yes, we do." But anyway, yeah. So Pokemon.
So what was the catchphrase of Pokemon?
Gotta catch 'em all, man.
Gotta catch them all, because if you're gonna be like, what a brilliant marketing move that was, right?
Yeah.
Buy all our playsets and toys.
I know, it's essentially like saying like Pepsi, just drink it in your face now, all of it.
Right.
It's just telling you what to do. But they're kids. It worked.
It did work, but why? Why is that so compelling?
Well, I mean, a couple things, but there's a lot of things actually. Should I get into the psych portion now?
I'm gonna give like a basic overview of my theory before you actually give like credentialed science. I'm just gonna wildly speculate first. So kids like, they've got this nurturing thing that, like, I don't know if you've ever seen kids with a new baby. Like, my sister just had a baby, and the other kids, like, there's a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they're just all about just taking care of that baby, like nurturing it, making sure it's happy. They just love this, like, there's something smaller than me that I can take care of, and I can, I don't know if it's just like a transition into adulthood, but there's something about kids, they love to nurture adorable things.
Mm.
So I think it's playing on that, but it also has this weird like managing statistics aspect. It's blending complexity with simplicity, and we'll get into the complexity later. But it's simple in that like rock beats fire, and fire beats grass. So it's got that like rock paper scissors simplicity, but there's a lot of complexity to it. So older gamers who are going back to it can be like, oh yeah, EV training and specialized this and that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And plus, they had that cartoon, right? So you're watching people, or like a kid that's just probably a little bit older than you, become a Pokemon master, and that's what you want to do for kids, is show someone just a little bit older than you being awesome, or
and
doing
if you
whatever
watch the
behavior.
cartoon, Ash Ketchum, the 10-year-old Pokemaster, like, he's pretty much a blank slate. He has no real personality except that he wants to be a Pokemon master. Like, he wants to be the best. That's all he wants. So really, the kids can kind of, it's like the same reason Bella of Twilight is such a popular protagonist for high school girls.
Because she's worthless.
Because she's a blank slate. They can put themselves onto her as like an avatar.
Right.
And the same thing with Ash. Like, for the kids, like, he is them playing Pokemon. Like, it's like they're getting to watch themselves play the video game, which is why parents understand the appeal. But any kid that was playing the game is like, yeah, I remember catching my first Butterfree. I remember when Lara was playing it. She put her team together. It was like the team Ash Ketchum was putting together in the show. That's what she was using in the game, and she would like switch them out as he switched his. So it's very much like this reflection, this like input-output loop, feedback loop. Projecting yourself onto that cartoon.
Well, that makes sense. And if you have like, it's kind of like cognitive dissonance. Like you empathize with the character and you say like, oh yeah, that's what I would do, until he does something that is extremely something you would not do, and then you have to reevaluate. Am I still like that guy? And so he never does that. So that makes sense.
Yeah, he has no personality except wanting to play this game a lot, which is also what you want to do.
Yeah. Huh. That's pretty funny.
And then you've got the Brock, who's the all he wants, like his only personality is he wants to hook up with every girl in the show. And if you have an older brother, that's also what he wants to do. If he's like in high school, and he's just trying to like all he's thinking about are girls, like it's easy to relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. Huh. That is funny. And then you got the kind of generic girl.
Yeah, her
Uh,
her whole personality type is that she's more into like the nurturing aspect of Pokemon. Like she's less competitive and more like just likes raising them, which was a lot of girls were way into that. They like to just there's all these mini games in Pokemon. You can put them in fashion shows. You can breed them. There's all these different ways you can go about it. And I know it sounds super sexist, like girls just want to put bows on their Pokemon, but that's kind of how they marketed it, and it seemed to work a lot.
yeah, yeah. Men wanted to battle them and beat the game, and girls just want to put them in fashion shows. It's pretty bad. Pretty bad. But yeah. So okay. So there's a few things that came into mind, or that come to mind when I think about Pokemon, as I view it through my psych lens. And like one of which is like it's wildly popular because of like reinforcement schedules. We kind of talked about these on the World of Warcraft episode, which we allude to a lot. So maybe I should go over those again in some future episode. But
Right.
yeah, reinforcement schedules have to do with behaviorism. So well, you know a lot about behaviorism by now, probably. How would you summarize it?
So with reinforcement schedules, like you're getting a reward every so often on certain intervals,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's kind of how you control their behavior, right? Like if you give the dog the treat, then he's gonna do the thing you want him to do.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I'll go over them real quick, and then I'll let you guess which one Pokemon does, or which ones. First, fixed ratio schedules. That just means like, every time you do this, I'm gonna give you a reward, right? Like every time I fight in a battle, I level up, for example, or
Right.
or like every fifth time or every sixth time, but it's fixed. It never changes. You know that every fifth time you're gonna get it. So how do you think you start? Well, I guess we don't. Yeah, how do you think you start behaving when it's every 10? If it's every 10, how do think you start behaving with that?
Um, you'll be doing it. You'll be wanting the rewards. So you're gonna do it every 10, but maybe like not as excited about it because you're like, oh, I got 9 more to do. Oh, I got 8 more to do.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So you get that level or you get whatever it is, and then like you get that little lull for a minute where it's like, all right, back to the grind. Here we go. And then,
Yeah.
once you get around 10, you see a market increase in that behavior. People might do a gaming-thon, like if they're like, oh, actually, I've seen people do this in World of Warcraft, where they're like, actually, I think I can nail level 29 tonight, man. So I'm gonna play all night. You see an increase in that behavior.
As it gets
Um,
closer.
right, right. Then you get the variable ratio schedules. Now, what is that?
Is that like the um like where it takes like you kill 2 wolves in World of Warcraft and you're level 2, and then by the time you're level 60 it takes like 3,000 wolves?
Yeah, yeah. Except that's more of a fixed ratio. It's just one that it can
Oh,
change
so
over
would
time.
variable be more random, like just like loot
Yeah.
drops?
Unpredictable is kind of the
Okay.
key word in this. So like as you're going along, you check pots, or it's like Zelda. Why do you smash all the pots? This, because every once in a while something comes out, and you never know when. Sometimes it's six in a row. Sometimes you don't see one for 1,000 years.
Yeah, and
Um,
there might be like a rare collectible that you would have missed otherwise, so you gotta check.
right, and there's memes that show how efficacious this approach is, right? Like the memes of like Zelda, and it shows like a pot store, and then it shows Link, and he's like, and his eyes are super wide. That's because we assume Zelda or Link likes to break them all because we break them all as Link.
So would
Um,
this be the encounters, right? Like they've got the rare Pokemon, the common
yeah,
Pokemon, and then the incredibly rare. It's like a 0.012% chance to get like a shiny Pokemon.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like this happens with those exactly, or the Pokemon that you just don't have yet. Like
Hmm.
let's say you want Gyarados or something, and you don't have them yet. Like, and when it pops up, you're like, oh, I got another one that I don't have. Awesome. So you play it some more.
Yeah, I still remember that rush of like happy endorphins that just flooded my system when I was playing Pokemon X, and all of a sudden Articuno just flew in. I was like, "Oh, a legendary bird! Oh, I've never seen one!" And it just like just randomly attacked me in the middle of the grass.
It's
Uh,
great. Yeah, it's right. It makes you feel so good. It's more likely to make you come back. Then there's fixed interval schedules. This is kind of what you were talking about before, what you thought was variable, but
okay, so this is
it's the
just where it's
wolves.
progressing at a kind of exponential rate.
Yeah, and you could kind of look at it and say, okay, so it looks like I'm gonna get, a reinforcer here, and then after that, it's gonna get a little harder, that kind of thing. So,
And this is
uh,
just the normal level cap on
oh,
Pokemon, like levels 1 to 100.
sorry, I misspoke. Fixed interval has to do with time. Sorry about that.
Okay.
The ratio is so your behavior, your reinforcement is contingent upon your behavior. So that means like, if you behave well, consider depending on which one you've got, you get reinforced at some point. Whereas this is an interval one. So this one we use for like I work in a place for people with intellectual disabilities, for example, and one of them was being violent, towards other residents. Well,
Was he a
that's obviously
gamer?
he was not a gamer. No, he had never played a violent video game. But had he, I would have quickly tied those two together and told the
You got
media.
it. You gotta.
But yeah, yeah, you got to inform them all. But no, the way we did it was we got a little egg timer, and I call them egg timers because this one looks like an egg. So I'd crank it up, and I'd say, all right, so here we go. First, we'll start small, like at 30 seconds. So click, click, and then I set it down. And then 30 seconds, he doesn't aggress on someone. I go and give him something he likes. If it was someone with severe intellectual disabilities, you'd give him like sometimes they like banana chips or anything that make like sometimes they're attached to a specific blanket. Whatever it is that brings them happiness. You give that to them, and then you say, good job. You didn't bite. Or if they're like very severely, you say no bite, good, no bite. But the ones I work with they're mild to moderate. So they're basically like teenagers as far as intellectual functioning goes. So some bad decisions, some very bad decisions, but overall they can understand. So I'm like, hey, thank you for not hitting anyone. I really appreciate that. And then I do that over time. So I'm rewarding them based on their time of doing the good behavior, which is not hitting. And then over time, you lengthen that out. Finally, we've got a variable interval schedule. So what do you think that is?
So this is just like random intervals, like if like you go in this room and do your homework, and I'm gonna check in every couple minutes or every couple hours and make sure you're still doing it. If you are, then you can have a treat.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like I do this one with my son a lot when he's if he's cleaning his room. He takes a while to clean his room. That's fine. I'm not looking for like time, and I know that he likes to play a little bit as he cleans up. That's okay. I'll teach him speed later. First, I'm setting in the behavior, and as I do that, I check on him randomly. And if he's still doing it, hey, good job, man. Thank you for still cleaning your room. That's awesome. A little social positive reinforcer, and then if he keeps doing it, it worked.
Yeah, I actually
Um,
set that up when I was studying Japanese. I was, it's not fun to study, so I'm just like, all right, this is my study time from this time to this time every day. I want you, to my friend, I said to her, I want you to just randomly check on me, like maybe once a week. And if you check on me, I won't know when you're going to do it, but if I'm studying when you check on me, then that means I get to go treat myself to like Korean food or something, or some kind of thing I want to do that's expensive that I normally can't do.
nice.
And if I'm not, then I don't get to go on Netflix that day, and until I spend that day, doing the studying again.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So it's a perfect example. Which one of these do you think the research shows is the most, by far, the most effective for stabilizing a behavior and keeping it at high functioning over a long period of time?
Um, just judging from what World of Warcraft uses the most, because they are the digital crack of video games,
Yeah,
I'd have to say that maybe the most effective is going to be the random, what was it, the variable
ratio.
behavior
Ratio.
ratio. Yeah, the one that's like the drops or the coins in the pots.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. The ones that are based on your behavior but are at random. So like if every time my son finishes cleaning his room, like sometimes I go, hey man, let's go to and I give him a high magnitude, low latency. Latency means time until reinforcer. So like quick, high magnitude just means how effective it is. So if I say, hey, you cleaned your room and you know what, you've been doing that really well. Thanks. Here's what I'm gonna do. Let's go get some ice cream. That's gonna be the best. And as you start seeing that, you'll be able to maybe, you guys might not have training, but you'll be able to see it in effect a lot of different places. But here, yeah, in Pokemon, it's the super rare ones. Isn't that kind of what, like even after you collect most of the Pokemon and you may have completed most of the game content, is that what's keeping you playing?
Yeah, that's what keeps me playing. A lot of people go for the competitive play, which we can talk about later. We had a listener request for that, but a lot of people play for that. But for me, I'm more of the. I see that hole in my Pokedex. I'm like, man, I really want to get that rare Pokemon that I missed, and so I'll just keep going in there and keep fighting them until I get that random encounter that I'm looking for.
Yeah, right, right. Well, I mean, a lot of them too. They're trying to collect it maybe to fill out their rosters, and then if you see them playing a lot, you're like, well,
Mm.
what are you doing here? Oh, I'm doing that. But once they complete it, yeah, I mean competition. But that one, Competition without that variable ratio, it's not as high of a predictor of your behavior. So
Right.
yeah, pretty interesting. But yeah, I would just want to touch on that quickly because that's coming into play a lot of different places. You get the fixed ratio based on like leveling, right? You level your
Mhm.
Pokemon. That's something you reliably know is going to happen. And then you get that variable ratio of like the rare Pokemon or like I think that's really kind of the big one. Um, and yeah, and then I don't think it gives any fixed interval or variable interval, does it? Like based on time playing?
Yeah, sometimes like you'll have a Pokemon that like when you're breeding them, they'll
Hmm.
hatch from an egg after a certain number of steps, so it's kind of a time thing. Or
There
if
you go.
you're they've got a few things like that where just after a certain amount of time, an event will happen and you will get like a little small reward.
See, yeah, see, the best systems are going to be if I could set up the perfect system. What I do is I do a number of these, and they're called behavior plans. So one of my or a couple of them when I work with kids, or also when I work at this the facility for people with intellectual disabilities, I do a number of these. I say, okay, so we're going to do this way, we're going to do this way, this way, and we have amazing success because we track their behavior over time, on a chart. And I say, remember we implemented here, here's where it started. Look at what we got now. Um, yeah, so that's what they're doing, which is kind of hilarious and awesome, and it helps explain.
It's funny how the video game industry is so on the ball with evidence-based psychology when the field of psychology isn't fully on board yet.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Practitioners, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Like
there's a split. I should tell everyone. There's a split between psychologists. There's experimental and there's clinician, right? Or clinicians. So you've got your scientists, clinicians, scientists and clinicians, and the best of us do both, right? I'm doing. I say the best of us, and I say use myself as an example. That's not great, but the best of us, we do the science, we understand it, and then we consume it as we help people, right? It's called the scientist practitioner model, and it's PhD level. It's very high. Unfortunately, most people have masters or degrees in social work, or sometimes PsyDs. They've never done research ever in their life, and so they don't understand the value of it, and they think they can just intuition their way out of like OCD. That's not how it works. So, so we get frustrated. People like myself, I get very frustrated when people aren't using evidence-based psychology. Because I know it works. We've seen the charts, and I've used it myself, and it works fantastically. I fix people all the time. It's amazing. And these
it's
people who are
called
like,
it's called evidence-based. It's based on evidence.
I know.
We have proof that it works.
It's science, and we see people get better in like 4 weeks, and they were like, oh man, I was going to therapist for 2 years. And I'm like, okay, the term therapist should be retooled here. Let's just say go to a psychologist every time. And when you go to that psychologist, I'm sad I have to say this, but because the old school didn't do this, but the new school is scientific. So the older folks in the field, they're going to be, ask them if they're evidence-based. And if they look at you funny or have any hesitation whatsoever, then do
They
not
bring
go
up
to
the
them.
word Freud even once. You demand to see some evidence-based. Yeah, I think it's kind of a sad state on human affairs where like when the incentive is to get children addicted to paying you money, like we are going to use all the science in the world. But when the incentive is helping people change their lives for the better, people are like, I think I can intuit my way through this. Science
Oh,
is not that important.
but here's the problem. It's not. Like a lot of them go to work to get a paycheck, and they just try to help kids while they're there. And that's what really frustrates me. If you've ever, well, of course you haven't. Why would I say that? I was going to say if you've ever worked in a community mental health setting. Of course you haven't. But like those are, I mean, like we always say that like it's a bad word in academia. Not that the people there working there aren't saints, because they are. We respect all of them for being in that setting because it sucks. But for as far as we say it as a bad word because they never use evidence-based psychology because the system is actually pushed against it. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent here. I should get into hoarding. Hoarding is what made me think of Pokemon, right?
Yes.
It's and why? Like, what is it about hoarding? Like, what do you know about hoarding? I should ask.
Okay, so everything I learned about hoarding is from reality TV.
There you go. So you know it all. So
Basically,
Dr. Drake, then I guess you
yes,
got a PhD.
go ahead and call me Dr. Drake from now on. And basically, my master's degree got upgrade just now to a PhD. No, so hoarding is it's like this kind of compulsive need. Maybe it's related to obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't know, but it's this compulsive need to just like hold on to everything in case it comes in handy someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
at least when I'm playing video games and I'm hoarding, that's kind of my mindset, right? Like, oh wait, I might need this sometime. I don't want to sell it, but I need the inventory space.
Right, right. Because of that variable ratio schedule, like you've had times in the past where you had something that was needed, and you were like, "Oh, hey, I just so happen to have it. How about that?" And so, because that's such a powerful mechanism, you get people who like moms who have 1,000 things in their purse, right? The just in case items.
Hmm.
All of us do this, especially mothers, or a lot of times it is only mothers. I hate to say, but fathers do it too sometimes. Like I had a backpack. I'd never carried like a baby bag, but I had a backpack and I'd have all kinds of stuff in there, like Band-Aids and stuff, diapers, whatever, because I got a couple kids, and that way you're like in the military we called it the Johnny on the spot, which just means it's a really stupid name. They have a
Oh,
weird
yeah.
lingo. Yeah, for like the guy who's perfect. He has everything he needs every time.
Yeah, look at Johnny on the spot here. Yeah, I think we use that in civilian world as well. I'm familiar with it.
Okay, good, good. But yeah, so like that is what's driving this. But the thing is, there seems to be some kind of genetic component too. So it's operating on something you already have a tendency towards, which is
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
this.
We already
Yeah.
decided that we don't have any free will in the issue from last episode, so tell me how my genes are screwing me over now.
Well, in violence it does, but in some things it doesn't. Like there's a lot of behavioral flexibility in other areas, such as like anxiety or depression. Your genes have very little to almost no prediction of that. That's called the diathesis stress model, and it just means like stress being something that sets you over the edge. Diathesis means the genes. It's
Mm.
a modern model. It sounds kind of like catalyst model, right? Which is
Mm.
kind of the point. Catalyst is specific to violence, but it's based off the diathesis stress. So anyway, yeah. So with hoarding, or this tendency to like want all the Pokemon, like maybe you knew some people who didn't collect them all and level them all up to 99 or whatever it was,
Mm.
and maybe you knew some who did. Well, there's a small genetic component there, sure, but then you get this thing of like that variable ratio scheduling, right? So like
Uh,
sometime in their life they had something that someone else needed right then, and it was highly reinforcing. Maybe it was someone they loved or something like that, and they thought they're like, oh, that's great. Oh man, that felt so good. And then so when they go to throw something away, they don't want to do it because it's a harder decision for them. For us, like us norms, us normal folks, we don't do that. Like we might, or
don't include me in that list. I want to catch them all.
yeah, I should put. I know I need a. I'm trying not to say too much about psychology all at once. That's my problem. But everyone's on a dimensional scale, right? From
Mm.
normal to just batshit crazy, and like in any one category. And for this tendency, there's all the way from like kind of average, run of the mill, to like really far down where they don't give a crap about things and they'll throw them away. Like me as a bachelor, I used to
Uh,
just throw everything away. Every time I moved, I'd throw everything away.
yeah, that's how I am with my real world belongings. It's only video game belongings that I'm a hoarder.
There you go. So that shows where your kind of value lies in there. 'Cause in in the video game world, no, I meant as far as like usefulness, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
your real world items have never been reinforcing to you usefully, right? In the real world, whereas your video games have in the video game world. Again, we're good at context. Violent video games don't cause violence in the real world. Anyway,
Right. Pokemon doesn't make you a hoarder in real life.
I know that would be stupid, but this is like, this is a perfect system to make you a hoarder, and it does. That's the whole point of the system. Got to collect it all, and or got to collect them all. So like genetics, does play a little bit into it, but mostly this is one of those that's highly malleable and is very subject to epigenetics, which is environmental influences on our genes. It's a bi-directional relationship.
Mm.
Anyway, wow, I'm really getting off on left field here. Okay, so hoarding is a form of OCD. So you said it right, like
Okay.
obsessive compulsive
So it's
disorder.
it's behavior that you feel compelled to do.
Yeah. Yeah, like so you have an obsession, right? So something you obsess about, something intrusive thoughts, things like that. And they don't have to be violent intrusive thoughts, but just things like
Catching them all.
yeah, or like ooh, I don't want to play the video game. Oh man, or whatever. Or like oh, that Gyarados is still out there. I want that. Or like oh, that legendary Pokemon is out there. Oh man. And then you're compelled to do it. Like the predictor of that thought for the subsequent behavior is huge, right? And that would what we call that a disorder at that point. We're like, okay, well, if you have that obsession, something that enters your mind a lot, and then you are compelled to do it every time, that's the problem if it's getting in the way of your life.
Mhm.
So hoarding is just a subset of these because there's a few different subsets as it turns out. Like one is we do things called factor analyses. Should I get into that? No, I won't. Basically, we look at it with the maths, and a few different parts kind of popped out. There's 4 like factors or clusters of data, basically, or clusters of symptoms within OCD, and those are contamination and washing,
Mhm.
right? Then you've got aggression and checking. Then you've got hoarding, which is the one we're talking about here, and then you've got symmetry and ordering. So the ways those look, I'll go through them real quick. But contamination, washing, I think everyone knows that. That's kind of the germaphobes, right?
Yeah.
Those people who are Purelling their countertops after someone sits on them, that kind of thing. So they're afraid that something will become contaminated, and that if I don't do it, I'll get sick or someone will die or whatever. Aggression checking just means like they have violent, intrusive thoughts I'm gonna run over if I don't, or like what's keeping me from running over that random pedestrian? Oh no, oh no! Like they're terrified of becoming aggressive,
Mm.
and so then they do a checking thing. Like one of them would be like or like their mother's gonna die, right? My mom's gonna die if I don't like go and turn my stove top 3 times to the left
Right.
and then
It
two
might not
times
even
to the
be
right.
related to it, right? Like I can't step on the cracks, or my mom will die, or I
Oh
gotta
yeah,
knock on this wall 3 times before I leave, or I'll get hit by a car.
oh yeah, one of the diagnostic criteria is what we call magical thinking, which just means like they assign a very high correlation between these two things, but they kind of know it's not true. They'll say it out loud, but they can't get themselves to behave differently. So
Yeah,
like the
like uttering a Hail Mary just in case.
yeah, the just in case. See, there you go. Then you get these hoarding people, which is kind of what we're talking about here. And then you get symmetry and ordering. And so for any of those folks out there who think one of their friends is OCD, if they fit into one of these categories and it's inhibiting their life, maybe that's true. So symmetry and ordering, that's just those people who like, that's the pop culture one of like,
Like
oh, my
mom.
desk has to, yeah, my desk has to be perfect because, I've got OCD. And everyone has tendencies like this. Like my desk at work, oh my God, people talk about it all the time. They're always like, it's like, man, what is up with your desk? It's always perfect. And I'm like, that's how I like to have it, else my mind kind of gets distracted by things.
Right. Yeah, we all have it to some level.
Sure, sure. So, but anyway, with here, it's hoarding. So, there's a few different things that come with this, and it's kind of what we're talking about, a few different things that we see traits in people with OCD or who are at risk, and
Hmm.
it's that they're, indecisive, and that they're also perfectionists. And when I say perfectionist, I mean specifically, something we call maladaptive evaluative concern, which just means, okay, maladaptive means not good, right? Not good for you. Evaluative, or not helpful for you. Evaluative just means like what valence you put on something, like how worthwhile it is, yes or no, like how much it gives, how much pleasure it gives you. And then
Hmm.
concern just means like they're worried about getting rid of it. So it's an aversive control thing. It's not like a value per se. It's not like they just like, oh, I love these things. It's more, I don't want to get rid of these things, and
Right.
therefore I want them around me more. That kind of thing. So it's a funny little discrimination, but it's how we have to treat it. So you can't just like try to get them to value something else because it's not about shifting their values. It's about getting rid of the aversion of getting rid of the item.
How would you rate like for me the compulsion sets in where it's that completionist thing that kind of follows me in all my games where I just want to fill out the Pokedex. Like how would that rate into this? It's not really the same as hoarding, but there's still like a compulsive element to it.
Well, I would say, yeah. I mean, it's a low-level hoarding, like subclinical is how we put it, because it's dimensional, right? Like diagnoses are kind of a silly thing where they say, oh, this tendency is getting pretty weird, so there you go. So a lot of scientific psychology people don't really love the diagnosis structure because people think when they have one they can't get rid of it and all those other things. And I'm like, no,
Right.
it's just a
It's kind of
label.
self-defeating.
Yeah,
But
it's like calling you a kid. You're just somewhere along in your
the way you're
developmental
describing
curve.
this, like with like the just in case, and like I might need it sometimes, so I want to have it. Like that doesn't really come into play here. It's more just I like the look of it if it's all filled out, you know.
Yeah,
So
okay, so
maybe that's more of an ordering thing. Maybe it just looks better.
yeah,
Like a
maybe
order.
actually. I hadn't thought of that. What I was thinking of originally was this dichotomy between which one is driving the behavior, whether it's is it values based or behavioral based, where it's a reinforcement, right? So on these schedules, or is it something where it's a more about aversive control, like you don't want to get rid of these things because you might need them later, or like I need to level these things up and get more of them because so that I can have them for later just in case. So I guess that's a question to every person who's listening. But what about you?
Yeah, so for me, I don't really care. Like once I've got them in the Pokedex, like I'm fine with like trading them off or letting them free, letting them run free in the wild again. I just want to have like the complete Pokedex. I like there's never going to be a situation where I need to have a Butterfree. I just want to have a Butterfree, so when I'm looking at my Pokedex, there's not a big question mark next to Butterfree.
So, a question I would ask, I guess, is what part do you look at the situation and go, "Oh, this is nice"?
What
Is
part
it
do I?
yeah? Is it like when you defeat an enemy with the Pokemon, or is it like, "Oh, look, everyone's in my Pokédex now"?
Yeah, no, I never use these Pokemon again. I just like to have them in the Pokedex so I can look at it and say, oh, look, everyone's in my Pokedex.
And does it bug you while you're like not
Bug
if you don't
type
have it up?
Pokemon. Does it bug me?
Yeah.
It doesn't like. I guess not. I don't know. It's not really like something that bothers me. It's just something like, oh man, I still got to catch a Butterfree. Like it's just like a goal, like a mini goal I've set for myself in the game, like like achievements. It's just kind of like, oh, that's an achievement I haven't unlocked yet. I should do that sometime. But
Ah,
like,
okay, okay.
but you can look at any of my Pokemon games. Like I never collect them all. Like I never get them all. But I always like make that my goal as I'm playing through. Like I try and get as many as I can, and then I just put the game down and move on. But
Okay.
ideally, I'd like to have them all. I just don't want to put in all the effort that's gonna take.
So then it's definitely subclinical, and then it would be symmetry and ordering, like you said, because
Uh,
subclinical because you can put it down. It's just that you really want to do it, and you want to do it. Actually, I would say yeah, yours is symmetry and ordering, I think. And then also the other ones are coming into play, not the factor structures of this, but the reinforcement schedules, because you still probably find it fun whenever in certain parts of the games where you encounter a rare Pokemon or whatever, you might be like, oh wait, no, I don't, no, don't talk to me right now. I'm playing this portion.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's definitely. So yeah, less hoarding. That's good. Good for you. Which is some people it might be, because with those people they have a harder time getting rid of them because they assign so much value in the items. Like they try to sell like a crappy plastic dish for like $8. Pe-
Yeah, I'm more that way in RPGs, right? Like, oh, I've got, like, at the end of the game, I'll have, like, 20 Mega Elixirs I don't want to use just in case I need them. It's like, it's the last boss. You can use your Mega Elixir now.
Yeah, yeah, I do that too. I'm very like hoardish with anything like that. I don't even use them. Like on Child of Light, I never used those fairy potion things.
Yeah, me either. I just had a big pile of potions at the end of that game.
'Cause you never know.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'll just get them back naturally. I'm not gonna abuse substances to get my fairy points.
Right, right, right.
I'm au natural. I don't vaccinate my child of light either, and I only use homeopathy to keep her in battle shape. I'm like,
Uh,
I'm the kind of mom I hate.
Yeah, I can operationally, like just being a psychology dude, I can up your value on items like this too. Like not only just make it more reinforcing so that every time you start playing Pokemon, you have a good time. That becomes a secondary reinforcer. The idea of Pokemon, you like I like Pokemon. That means that's called a secondary reinforcer. It's not that Pokemon, the word, has ever done anything for you or the concept. It's that your interaction with things tied with Pokemon has always been pleasant for you, right? Or mostly been pleasant.
Right.
But there's I can raise your value of like things like Pokemon in general. There's a few different ways, but one is like scarcity. So like you value even if the rare ones weren't more powerful, which in some games rare things aren't more powerful, they're just rare. We like them more, and the way we can operationally change that is like there was a study, the famous study, the Warshell study. Stephen Warshell, I don't know how to spell it. I think he's a German name. Um, Basically, he like okay, so they said it was marketing research, but they took a jar of cookies,
Hmm.
and there were two conditions. One, they filled the cookie jar all the way up, and the other one, they didn't fill it all the way up. There were only a few left. Now, how do you think people behaved between those two groups? Oh yeah, and sorry, and the task was that they were supposed to taste the cookie and rate it on deliciousness, desirability, and how expensive they think the thing should be.
So the rarity one, like the one with only a few left, was probably rated more delicious and more expensive because of the scarcity, because of economics of supply.
Yeah, isn't that weird? Like, and more desirable too. They thought it should be more expensive. And it's the same cookies, and
Yeah.
they also said it's more delicious, and they wanted it more. So
Right.
than the one that was full because it's that scarcity resource, right? So like, anyway, like you can. A lot of people do this, like with Steam Summer Sale, for example. Like, oh, time is short,
Yeah,
and then
off the
suddenly,
ticking clock. In fact, a lot of like less than reputable websites will do that. Like if you've ever, um, those websites that have like memberships, like Match.com does this.
hmm
Well, they'll do like upgrade now for a special upgrade rate, and there's like a little ticking clock, right? And if
uh,
you like, because you have like a free membership and an upgrade one, and if you go back like a month later or like even a couple days later, that ticking clock will still be there, and it's the same numbers, like it
oh,
hasn't moved.
jeez.
And you're like, that's not. You're trying to make me think this is a scarce resource, but you're gonna always offer me a rate. Or phone companies do this, like internet companies, like upgrade now for the special upgrade rate, and then you just ask for it anytime you call. Like here's a tip: if you ever want cheaper internet or faster internet, just call and tell them you're canceling it. They'll give you all the special rates that are not available.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
always available. You just have to ask for them.
Yeah, I do that. I do that with my credit cards. Every time I open one, I give it a little bit, and then I say that I'm like, I think I'm gonna switch back to what I was. And they're like, oh, well, what if I told you we could blah blah? Yeah,
Yeah.
usually give you interest free for a year or something. It's awesome. Yeah, so that's going on here. And really, that's like whenever I look at Pokemon and I see people playing it, that's these are the things that come to mind. And that's really there's more to say, but those are the most interesting. Um, Other than the modeling thing, of course, which is the cartoon. You put out a cartoon, you put out a product, and you show the person in the cartoon using the product and it helping them some way.
Yeah.
It's called social modeling, and we like that stuff.
Sure. There's a reason why every cartoon we grew up with was actually selling a toy of some kind.
Yeah,
Transformers, Ninja Turtles,
right.
Gummy Bears was even a product placement. So come on.
It's even better though if you show, or it works better if you show someone that they look up to, like Sonic eating chili dogs.
Mhm.
That's the best for chili dog sales. Not so good for Sonic toys
Right. Yeah.
sales.
Like Ninja
Beca-
Turtles ups the pizza sales. More.
Right, right. You want to show them interacting with the object and like being like, "Oh, this is awesome. We love this." Like skateboarding for Michelangelo. Not necessarily like, "Oh, there's a
Right.
Michelangelo toy."
Or remember how big karate lessons got during that craze? Like all the kids were enrolling in karate, and they all had black belts.
Yeah,
They give them out like candy.
yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Blind man.
Cool.
But yeah. Yes. Is that about it then?
Well, I got a little literary side to touch on.
Okay.
There's not a great literary tradition of Pokemon. They don't show up in like Jane Austen. But the interesting thing about Pokemon is like each game takes place in its own region, and each region's loosely based on a place in the world. Like the first few games were on various like regions of Japan, like different islands, and
Oh,
then they had one of the newer ones. I think it was Black and White, took place in like basically Manhattan. And then the most recent one, X and Y, that one takes place in France. And you actually even have like an Eiffel Tower as one of the gyms, the
oh,
electric gym.
sweet.
So it's pretty cool that way. But also each of the regions kind of comes with their own mythologies, and those mythologies actually mirror Japanese mythologies in Japan and European mythologies in Europe.
Really?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Like, okay, so do you know the religion of Japan, like the native religion or the one that's like essentially Japanese?
I know one. I know one is there's the ancestor worship thing, and then there's that one where there's only been one terrorist ever to have committed a terrorist act based on this, and it was Shintoism.
Yeah, that's what I'm
The
talking
guy.
about. Shintoism.
Ah.
Um, so I'm gonna read you a Pokemon creation myth.
Okay.
If I can find it here. It's on Bulbapedia, which apparently is the Wikipedia for Pokemon off of Bulbasaur. And so this is how the world came to be in Pokemon. In the beginning, there was only a churning turmoil of chaos. At the heart of chaos, where all things became one, appeared an egg. Having tumbled from the vortex, the egg gave rise to the original one. From itself, two beings in the original one did make. Time started to spin, space began to expand. From itself again, three living things the original one did make. The two beings wished, and from them matter came to be. The three living things wished, and from them spirit came to be. The world created, the original one took to unyielding sleep. Now, if you've ever studied any kind of mythologies outside of like Christian mythologies, Eastern mythologies especially, like that's gonna sound super familiar. This whole like chaos and then this egg forming,
No, I haven't.
um, a duality.
Oh
You
yeah.
might
Okay. Yeah.
be familiar with like even the Korean flag, like what's in the middle of it.
The South Korea. It's a rising. No, it's a yin yang.
Right, yin and yang, this duality of like creation, and then dividing into three parts, and so and like even the way the islands were created in Japanese, like the Japanese islands were like this goddess's like blood or tears, I forget which one, but it's very much reflected in the Pokemon. And if you look at the individual Pokemon themselves, like a lot of them are just like animals, right? Like Pikachu's a mouse, but also he shoots electricity. He's an electric mouse.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Pokemon are based off of Shinto folktale or Japanese mythology. For example, there's Sneasel, which is one of the newer ones. It looks like a weasel, kind of like a sneaky weasel, but it actually comes from the Japanese words for sickle and weasel, um, which is a Japanese mystical monster called a kamaitachi, And basically what he does is they hunt in packs of three, and this is pretty pretty gross. They move with lightning speed, right? And you're walking down the little road. You're just like a Japanese peasant going to the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and boom! First Komachi knocks you down. The second one uses his talons to flay the flesh from your legs, and the third one mends your wounds so you don't realize you've been attacked. And then they're all just eating your legs, and you're just walking. You gotta get back up. You thought you tripped. Like this is probably like the origin story for why tripping happens. So you think you tripped, you don't even know, but actually there's three weasel monsters with huge sickle claws chewing on your leg skin.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's a Pokemon.
Wow.
And then there's a really horrifying one. Okay, there's a Pokemon called Mawile, and it looks like a guy, like a person, like a woman with like a skirt, and then with hair, and the hair is actually a bunch of teeth. So it's got like a teeth in the back and then a face in the front, and it's super macabre. It's not a ghost Pokemon. It's like a sand Pokemon, I think, but it's like kind of adorable and kind of nightmarish at the same time. But
Uh, that's
sorry, go
sick,
ahead.
man.
Yeah, it's super sick. Yeah, like it's kind of cute too, but it's sick. But it's based on what's called a Futakuchi Onna, which is a Japanese monster. Who so picture a woman, right?
Mhm.
And she starts to get an eating disorder. Like she just goes extreme dieting. Like she's not eating very much,
Uh,
barely eating. She's trying to keep her figure, trying to be attractive. It's a culture that values attractiveness, and women need to look a certain way. She's maybe put on a few pounds, so she stops eating. Well, the problem with that is that if she barely eats anything, what happens is a second mouth sprouts from the back of her skull, and it requires twice the normal amount of food as her real mouth, and it's hidden behind her hair. So what will happen is men will marry these women that they don't know very well. It's a cautionary tale against like women not eating enough, and also men getting married to girls they don't know well enough, I guess, because. And you should see these like Japanese paintings of these monsters; they're horrifying. So they'll marry these women, and then on the wedding night, the hair will just turn to tentacles and like grab him and eat him in the
oh
back, the
God.
mouth on the back of her head. Yeah, there's a reason why like the ring in a lot of these horror movies come from Japanese because they have some pretty sick stuff.
Dude, well, I guess that makes sense. Doesn't Pokemon short for pocket monster?
Right? Yeah, they're just based on monsters. Like
Jesus.
there's one that's based on a Tengu, which is a forest spirit. That one's not pretty horrifying though. What's interesting is Whipcash, which is basically it's like a magic carp. It's like a big catfish with long whiplash mustache things,
Uh-huh.
and that one's based off of Namazu, which is in Japanese mythology a humongous catfish that starts earthquakes by thrashing around. And you're like, oh, maybe it's just based on a catfish. Well, back in 1855, there was a disastrous earthquake that leveled like a lot of Japan, killed like thousands of people, knocked down like 50,000 buildings, and the survivors were just scared and confused. So they started worshiping this giant catfish Namazu to stave off further calamities, because that's what you do with the magical worldview. If something happens, you want to control it, so you do whatever you can to feel like you're safe again. And so
Right.
what they did was they started worshiping a giant catfish named Namazu. Well, the Pokemon that looks just like Namazu, he's a fish type Pokemon, but guess what his powers are?
Earthquake or something?
Earthquake and Fissure. So obviously based off of this Namazu guy. And
That's
then
awesome.
yeah, and then another terrifying one. Have you ever heard the Yuki Onna, the Frost Maidens of Japanese lore?
No.
So there's a Pokemon called Frost Lass, and it looks like a girl wearing a kimono, and she's all white and pale. Well, this is based off of Yuki-Onna, which are vengeful spirits. They're kind of like the European sirens or banshees, where they
Uh,
lure people to their death with their voice. So what they do is they become these beautiful women that hover over the snow, and they lure you into like a blizzard, and you walk out and never come back.
oh,
That's kind of their
jeez.
explanation for people who vanished in snowstorms. She doesn't even just like wander snowy fields. She'll go into like homes and abduct children and like consume their blood. Like they're pretty terrifying, but they're also Pokemon. They're adorable.
Wow.
And then you go to the games that take place in Europe, like the Pokemon X and Y, like the legendary Pokemon.
Hmm.
There's Xerneas, which is the one that's the legendary one from X, and Evital, which is the one that's in Y, and they're actually based off of, I can't even pronounce these because they're Norse mythology, but there's Eibnir, which is a stag that lives on Valhalla. He like guards Valhalla,
Oh
and
yeah.
Evital is so that's what the stag-like Pokemon is supposed to represent, and Eviltal is like Hresvelger, who's just this gargantuan eagle that makes the wind blow by flapping its wings. And so these are out of Norse mythology, and it takes place in France, which is the it's not quite Scandinavia, but I think to the Japanese, they're like, close enough, Europe, North.
Right.
So you've got those, and then the most famous one, I think the one that everybody knows about, Vulpix and Ninetales. That's from the original Pokemon. It's like the fox with 9 tails.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's a common myth in Japanese, Chinese, and Korean mythology. It's basically like the kitsune, it's like a magical fox creature that can grant wishes, and it's very clever.
Mm.
So it's just interesting because even when you go in Pokemon X, like you go to France and you talk, and they're like, "Oh, have you ever heard the story of Beauty and the Beast? That's a story about these Pokemon." Like they take all the local legends of that area and they reinterpret them through Pokemon. So we
Oh,
just see
well,
these kind of mythologies showing up again.
that's cool. That's smart that they do that then, because people are more likely to be like, "Oh, that's a believable backstory,"
Yeah, and it kind of
or whatever.
resonates too. It's in your cultural kind of like almost your subconscious, the back of your head. You've got like we absorb a lot from our culture that we're not even aware of, and so
Yeah.
things kind of resonate with us, and we don't know why. And so these Japanese kids playing Pokemon, they're like, oh yeah, this idea of like guardian spirits and guardian animals that like protect you, like that's been in their culture and their almost in their cultural DNA for thousands of years, and so it's going to really resonate when you've got this Pikachu protecting you, because you used to have like if you've ever been to Japan, you've got those little like cat statues in front of all the businesses that are supposed to
Yeah, the
protect them
lucky
again.
cat thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's this idea that like lucky spirit animals can protect your business or your household is far older than just like enslaving them and putting them in magic balls,
Which is more fun.
which is way more fun.
There's nothing like a good like enslavement past for cultures. I think that's really helpful. Helps color us some.
Yeah, it gives us some nice things to talk about. Some animals battling each other. Now, we did have someone ask us to talk about competitive play. Like, I do know a little bit about that. They've got something called EV training, which, okay, so I didn't even know this was a thing until I started trying to like learn how to play Pokemon, and I was like, this is too much effort. But
Mm.
what it is when you level up, you get these random bonuses, right? Like strength goes up, defense goes up, whatever.
Hmm.
Turns out they're not so random. Like, let's say you fight a Geodude, that gives you one defensive EV point. Let's say you fight like 100 Geodudes, that gives you like 100 EV points. That means when you level up, your defense is more likely to go up because you've been fighting Geodudes, and they're like a
Ah.
defensive one. So there's this, and it's hidden, you can't see it, but it goes into the math. Like there's certain monsters you can fight to raise your EV value, and you can train your Pokemon to kind of be the kind of way that'll make them more competitive. Same thing with natures. It's another thing that Pokemon have I never paid much attention to. Like you can catch two Pikachu, and one will have a timid nature, and one will have I don't know, an outgoing nature or a brave nature,
Right.
and those are just code for certain of their stats go up more often and certain of them go up less often. Like if you have
Ah.
a timid Pokemon, then he's going to have more speed up increases and fewer attack increases. And
Oh.
so people who are really serious about it will catch like a bunch of the same Pokemon, or they'll breed them, right? Which is
Mhm.
kind of horrific. Like
Right.
the way you breed them, like you're forcing them to just have kids over and over again. But super horrific the way I do it, because I'll just catch a Ditto, it's the shapeshifting Pokemon, and I'll just throw him in a room with whatever, and he's got to breed with whatever I throw him in there because he's so it's just getting constantly raped by whatever I drop in there, a dragon, a walking turnip, whatever's in there. He's got
Oh,
to have sex with it and make a baby. And if it's not a baby I like, I just let the baby free and get another one, because you want to get the one with the right nature for whatever you're looking for.
oh my gosh, you're just letting them out. You're like, good luck out there.
Good luck out there, kid, in the wild with no defenses. And yeah, so there's that, and you got to worry about their happiness rating. You got to worry about all these different things, and then you've trained the perfect Pokemon team, right? You've got like you've caught like 20 different Bulbas or whatever Squirtles, and you know which one you want to use. But then you got to make your team. You got to choose from 718 different kinds. You got to include a team with like sweepers, which are basically they've got really good offense. Like if something that could kill somebody in one hit would be a sweeper. And then you've
Okay.
got some Pokemon that are called defensive walls. Like they put up things like light screen or just various things to increase their defenses for the rest of your team. And then you've got like ailment Pokemon who drop like poison or paralyzation, stuff like that.
You're
And then you've
right.
got something called like pivots and switches where you can like switch people out. Like this is kind of a cheesy strategy I've seen people do online, but like let's say I throw out a fire Pokemon, but really I want you to put out a water Pokemon because that's the answer to that. And when you
Right.
do, and so you're gonna put your water Pokemon out, you're gonna cast like a water spell or whatever, water move. I pull the fire guy out, and I put like this other guy out who actually gets healed when he gets hit by water or something to trick
Right.
you into wasting that move on something that doesn't hit it. So there's this whole like meta game in like kind of faking out the other person.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Okay. That
yeah.
happens like in StarCraft with like build orders.
Right, yeah, it's just about as complicated because like I said, you've got 718 Pokemon to choose from and 18 different types, and all the types are weak against certain things and strong against certain things. But like it used to be, Dragon was like the type you'd go to because it was strong against almost everything. But then they included the Fairy type, which is strong against dragons, and so now they've got like more of a weakness.
Oh, okay.
Which a lot of people kind of complain about. They call it retconning because they're adding these new types that didn't exist before, but they're basically just trying to balance out types that didn't have a lot of uh, people that could beat them before. So anyway, it's this complicated thing, and again, I'm not really like that into it. I just know it exists, and it's too much for me to actually care about. But one of our listeners just wanted us to kind of touch on that, and so that's kind of what I know about it.
Okay. So you didn't really get much into that scene.
No, I never really played competitively. I'm more of the just fill out the Pokedex and call it a night.
Got it. Well,
Like no one could call me the best, the very best that ever was.
but you wanted to be.
I wanted to catch them all. Yeah, exactly.
Very best. Awesome. Well, cool.
And
I,
there's
I didn't
one,
know it was so
yeah,
rich.
rich in literary lore.
Yes, indeed.
Well, and I don't know how much of this is deliberate and how much of this is just the guy who made the game, like grew up in this culture and it starts to show up in it. Like if you were gonna make a game, like there'd be a lot of stuff from your culture that would show up in it. There'd be maybe a fallen angel trope or maybe some kind
Right.
of like knight hero journey or like it's some of the stuff just kind of subconsciously shows up in the stuff we write. Like when you did your Dungeons and Dragons campaign, there were a whole lot of tropes that we could find in like Robert Jordan, for example. And we're
Right.
like, and we used to joke, we're like, oh man, he's ripping you off. It's like, not really. You're just both drawing from the same kind of culture.
All right. Yeah, so it's all kind of. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I wish people could become more aware of these things because they tend to say like, "Oh, that doesn't make any sense about other people's ideas,"
Mm,
because of their history of accepted ideas, which is shaped by your social kind of influences. So anyway.
right. Now, I'm interested to pick your brain about this. How closely did you follow this phenomenon that was on the internet a while ago? Twitch plays Pokemon.
Oh, a little bit, a little bit.
So what was the general concept?
Well, okay, so somebody coded in to the game that it could take the aggregate of commands, or not the aggregate, the winner of the commands. So a bunch of people would say press A, other people say press left on the directional pad, other people say
Mm,
press down and press B, or whatever. And whoever got the highest votes, it would actually do in the game. So you in chat, you would just write A or up or down or B or whatever,
mm.
and then they let the public play the game.
Yeah, so it's like thousands of people playing the same game of Pokemon.
Right, it's like the idea of Wikipedia, sort of. You know.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting to me about this, like that's all I knew about it too, but I did some research on it for this episode. Turns out, originally that's not how it worked. It just did what people said. So if everyone like said up and some people said down, some people said left, and some people said right, like he would just go up, down, left, right, like kind of in its own little way. Like it
Uh-huh.
was just pure anarchy. And then later on, they put that thing where whoever got the most votes, that's what it did.
Okay, yeah, because that's how it was first introduced to me, where you just type it in chat and it does it. But then I
Right.
went and looked at it, like at some point, yeah, there was like a little voting system there on the left. So, yeah.
Right, and some people kind of got mad when they changed that. They said it kind of ruined the integrity of the stream because the experiment was to find out what would happen, like not to manipulate a system to beat the game. So there was this kind of like debate online between the two camps. You had the democracy camp and the anarchy camp,
Huh. Huh.
and yeah, it's really interesting because the guy who actually made it, like he had a quote. He's not the guy who made it, but one of the guys who was in on the ground floor, like the guy who was like following it from the beginning. He said
Yeah.
that the point wasn't to figure out how to successfully navigate the game; it was to hook the game up to a stream and see what happens. If the end result is 15 days in the arrow maze, so fucking be it. That's the way it went. Changing the
Right.
system to be more stable, predictable, and controlled defeats the entire novel idea. Obviously, single player is the best way, and pure anarchy is the worst way to progress. But that's why it's so mind-boggling to make progress, because you make progress despite it being the worst fucking way possible to make progress. So what he's saying is, and it's kind of an interesting argument, he's saying that like when you appeal to reason, which is basically like what they did when they democratized it, it's
Right.
like, yeah, that's a way to play it, but what's more beautiful is to have this chaos happening and then have order come out of the chaos somehow anyway.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Is that what they explicitly said was the point of the
That's
experiment?
yeah, that's what the anarchists were arguing was the point. I don't know
Oh,
whoever made the first one, but they claimed that the point of it was to just see what would happen if a bunch of people were playing Pokemon at the same time.
okay.
So I don't know. It's kind of a cool little like a tension between it's just like in real life, right? We've got this tension between democracy and anarchy. We want both.
Right. We want to be free to do whatever we want, but we also don't want other people to be able to hurt us or whatever.
Right, and we look at our lives and they're messy, they're random, like things happen. We lose loved ones or we spill coffee on ourselves,
Yeah.
and but we still find it goes back to that existentialism, right? Like we still find joy in the chaos despite it.
Right.
So I don't know. I there's something Camus-like about this idea of everybody just inputting anarchy and then like beating Pokemon the worst, most least efficient way possible and still having fun with it.
Yeah, I'm definitely more interested in that, just being someone who's curious about human behavior and like especially in groups, getting a bunch of groups like this, finding at the point where it breaks, or if it does it become like one of these like 4chan forums, where like the
Mhm.
people who are worthwhile kind of left, or is it like does it evolve to something where like the people who are just trolling and putting in the things that are the worst, do they just kind of get trimmed? The fat gets trimmed because the novelty of like ruining the system goes away and they find something else to do.
Yeah,
I'm
and
curious about that.
from a human behavior perspective, it's interesting too how it eventually changed to be a more democratic system. So
Right.
it's almost like we couldn't like even though it started off that way, like we just were like, no, enough, we got to work together, we got to beat this game. When in reality, that's like the most boring result, right? You could just beat the game Pokemon on your own. Like
Right.
it's more interesting to see what happens when there's everyone's doing a thing. So it's kind of interesting how we kind of tend towards like trying to put order onto things, even when that makes it maybe less interesting.
Yeah, we definitely did in this example. Huh. Yeah, that's
So.
pretty interesting. I would be curious to see what happens over time if they would have continued to do it like anarchy wise.
Yeah, I think there's a paper there, like a sociology paper there, on like this Twitch plays Pokemon phenomenon, just like charting it and seeing what happened.
For sure, yeah. No. Well, yeah. It's
So
awesome.
any sociology majors looking for a nice term paper?
Yeah, this one's done for you. And I'm sure the data would be pretty easy to get. All you gotta do is get some kind of data miner in the chat and then bam, you got all the commands everyone inputs and it's already digitized. That's perfect.
Yep.
No.
So cool. That's about all I had to say on Pokemon. Yeah, I mean, like it's a phenomenon. Like what can't you say? It's something that just for 3 years it was just like all kids were talking about. Remember at
Yeah.
school, like everybody was like, I guess it was a little bit younger than us, but I remember my sister just like Pokemon lunchboxes, Pokemon everything.
Oh yeah.
He had like 50 movies that came out.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing when I was approaching this topic because I was like, okay, so typically what I do is I hear the topic and then I think, oh yeah, yeah. So what is my little psychology part of my brain? What is it? What kind of goes off right away? Because that's usually the most interesting. And
Mm.
with this, it was just a huge. I was like, oh, there's so much. There's like the phenomena. There's the gameplay mechanics. There's the content. There's the fact that like a bunch of kids were playing this game for hours and hours. Like, what's interesting about that? There's
Oh,
just a lot to say.
we even touch on the idea of evolution and like why didn't
Yeah.
that raise every and the cultural reaction to it about Satanism in Pokemon, where
Oh yeah,
preachers were burning
exactly.
Pikachu cards in front of their audience and saying that the devil was going to take over their kids through this fear of the other, this fear of this like Japanese culture coming in.
Exactly. Yeah, the xenophobia. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to touch on those in further podcasts. So that's all right. Yeah, so I guess that pretty much wraps up our in-depth analysis portion. And so I guess next we will go ahead and move on to the feedback section.
Okay, feedback. So we got an email,
Fantastic.
and this one comes from a listener named Dustin. And he says, "Hey guys, you guys should do a tabletop TO podcast." I don't know. Do you know what a TO podcast is? Is that like a live play?
I don't know.
All right.
Tabletop open or I don't know.
So he says, well, he suggests that we do one, a tabletop something podcast. That would be great to listen to, similar to the Drunk and Dragons podcast or D&D with Shooting the Shit podcast. Okay, I guess we should listen to those so we can see what he's talking about.
Yeah, that'd be
Um, you guys could even have cameo appearances with fans or something. Could be done over Skype with honor system roles. Another suggestion, a Twitter/Facebook group game. Let's say if you know next week is Metal Gear Solid themed, at the end of the show you can ask a silly question for funny fan responses, throw in some pop culture references for added effect. Example, make a Metal Gear/Game of Thrones spin-off pun. Absolute garbage example, but you're the college boys, so I'll leave the thinking up to you. Final suggestion, maybe post a time when listeners can Skype in and ask you questions about psych or games or just to thank you guys for doing what you do. Think those would be nice additions, but what do I know? I don't host a podcast. Thanks for reading and thanks for what you do, Dustin.
But what do I know? I'm a bear and I bite the heads off of fish. You know that's from
No.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome. Anyway, sorry. Cult film I love. But yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
I do like, and this is something we've been trying to do, is like more listener interaction stuff. A lot of the podcasts, like the Order 66 podcast on D20 Radio, has like a call-in kind of thing where people could they have a phone number people can call and leave messages, and they can answer voicemails that way.
Oh yeah.
So I think that would be fun to have like some kind of call-in aspect. Like even if we can't do it live, like I don't know how we're really bad at technology. There's probably a way we could do it live, but even if we could just get like a voicemail set up where people could leave us questions and we could play them and answer them on the show, I think that'd be a really cool addition. As far as a live podcast, I think we're planning on doing something like that. We've got a few episodes in the bank for Edge of the Empire, like us playing a role-playing game.
That's right.
So we just have to basically edit those, and we can release those as bonus content for people who are interested in that.
Yep. Yeah. So that'll be good. It's a lot. It's big, but they still seem to do well on other podcasts. So I mean, and I've listened to a few. So I don't know. There's a market for it.
Yeah, if people are interested, it's just gonna take some editing. Like we'll probably do that when I come down to visit you in Mississippi and just plow through some of that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So look forward to that later this summer.
Yeah, and appreciate the feedback. And those are good ideas. We're just I'd hate to like shoot this thing off too quick. Like if we're still kind of at what point in the growth of a podcast, we started with like 2 listeners or something, and then like moving up to where we are now. Like, what point does it make sense to do that, and will people show up? I don't really know.
Yeah, like we definitely have to have an audience that could support like a live call-in show. Like that's something that like really big radio shows can do because they have a lot of people listening. Because when you think about like maybe less than 1% of the audience is actually going to call in.
Right. Yeah.
We don't want to have like and now it's the call-in time and then nobody calls.
Right.
But like if we do voicemails, I think that's more convenient because people can just leave their messages at their own conveniences and we can handle them as they come up.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But as we get bigger, we can keep evolving it because I do love like my favorite part is the listener kind of interaction.
Yeah, because otherwise we're just kind of intellectually masturbating. No,
yeah,
well, we get to talk to each other, but
there's 2 of us, so I mean it's
something else going on there. Yeah.
No, it's like we get to talk to each other every day. So this is like the novelty for us is getting to interact with everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so thanks for the feedback. Really appreciate it. I love listener mail. Love the interactions on Facebook. There was a few different discussions. One was kind of had to do with the lack of free will, our kind of analysis of that, and
there was
kind of disagreed.
Naturally, there was some pushback on that because it's not a very intuitive or a very popular kind of notion that we don't really have will.
Exactly.
So we definitely had a good discussion on that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that?
I mean, it was a real short exchange, so I don't know. Other people didn't weigh in, which I thought that would cause more, kind of kickback. It's like that one time when we talked about being a gamer and what a true gamer is. Man, I got more.
You're all slaves to biology. That's fine, and you're not real gamers. What?
Hang on a second. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, yeah. So it didn't get as much activity as I thought it would, but it's still, raised.
Yeah, my brother
some...
actually called me about that the next day, and he's like, "You're gonna have to sell me on this a bit more. I'm open to the idea, but I need to be convinced." So we talked about it a little longer because it's not something I'm even sure I buy into, but it's something I think might be true. So
right. Yep, I get it. But cool. So what are we doing for next episode? This will be the last episode that we'll do a part, and then we're gonna be together for one of our friends' his wedding. So
Hmm.
we'll record that one together.
Oh yeah, we'll
So
have some good bachelor party stories for that.
for sure, that'll be good.
So next episode, this one is a long anticipated one for me. JRPGs, RPGs from Japan, or as we like to call them, JRPGs.
Jerpegs, yes, the jerpegs are very
JRPGs.
popular.
Yes, they are quite popular.
And I just got a pretty recent one, Nino Kuni, and so it's pretty purist.
It's got some
So I'll,
Pokemon elements to it.
it does, yeah. So maybe we can just put in more time into that. But
So send us your
cool.
questions to the Game Theory Podcast at gmail.com. If you have
Yeah,
anything you want us to talk about with JRPGs, with JRPGs.
yeah, go ahead and ask the questions there. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/gametheorypod. We're there, and I post semi-regularly. It's slowed down a little bit recently because I was playing all the Castlevania, but I plan to get back to it. And I usually put studies that I find interesting, or occasionally just regular old gaming news, but usually a little more academic. So should be entertaining.
You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Game Theory Podcast.
Yeah.
And now you can find us on d20radio.com, and you can find a lot of other podcasts there as well. If you are interested in hearing people discuss games, then that is the place to go. And be sure to check out the Order 66 podcast, all you Star Wars role players out there.
Yes. And that pretty much wraps up this episode then. So thanks for joining us, and we'd love to have you join us again next week. So for the Game Theory Podcast, I've been one of your hosts, Jeremiah.
And I've been trying to catch them all unsuccessfully, but until then, I'm David.
And this has been the Game Theory Podcast.